Narrative text confirms the protagonist's surrender to a man after discovering her life as a novel character.
A dark-haired man in a black cloak manipulates purple energy as a pink-haired woman watches him.
A white-haired knight with a golden sword clashes violently against the dark-haired man's surging magic.
The pink-haired woman realizes she was reincarnated as an insignificant, forgotten side character in this story.
In a softer moment, the white-haired knight smiles warmly while holding the pink-haired woman's hands. Surveying a dark room filled with bodies, the protagonist reflects on the tragedy of her reincarnation. The white-haired knight stands triumphantly over the defeated and fallen body of the dark-haired man.
Raising his blood-stained blade, the white-haired knight prepares to execute the fallen villain's younger sister.
The pink-haired woman lies dead, a victim of the male lead's retribution for her brother's crimes. The scene shifts as the gears of time begin to turn, signaling a shift in memory. Observing a blue toy snake, the protagonist wonders why these grim memories are surfacing in her mind.
Reborn as a toddler, the pink-haired girl stares in horror as a red eye watches her.
In a sunlit library, a young black-haired boy looks up from his desk with silent curiosity. Fearful of her mortality, the toddler girl trembles as heavy footsteps approach her in the library.
The black-haired boy, identified as the future villain brother, stands before her carrying a large box.
Standing over the trembling toddler, the boy looms as she blames him for her future death.
The black-haired boy stares down with intensity, his glowing red eyes fixed on his younger sister.
Standing in the center of the library, the black-haired boy asks what is wrong with the toddler. Terrified, the toddler forces a cute smile, deciding it is best to pretend to be normal.
The black-haired boy remains silent, watching his sister with a thoughtful and completely unreadable expression.
With a calm gaze, the boy holds out his hand and activates a surge of blue magic. The toy snake begins to float, carried through the air by the boy's impressive magical power. The floating snake lands in the toddler's hands as she looks on with a bewildered expression. A narrative box highlights the boy's terrifying talent, marking him as the story's future top villain. Only 7 years old, the boy's mastery over gravity distortion magic marks him as a future tower master. In a dark future, the adult villain laughs while spreading chaos across a rain-slicked landscape. The narrative concludes that the villain's reign of terror will end at the hands of the male lead. Standing over the fallen villain, the white-haired male lead prepares his final stroke with a bloody blade. The male lead turns his cold gaze toward Rosnia, declaring that it is finally her turn to die. Back in the library, the toddler Rosnia is startled by a sudden and very sharp sound. Squeezing her toy snake, Rosnia laments her fate of being dragged down by her brother's villainy. The toddler cries out in frustration, realizing her supposedly privileged life is actually a death trap. Desperate to survive, Rosnia contemplates how to escape the dead end described in the original novel.
A vision of a pink-haired woman with a red-haired knight represents a scene from the original story.
Close up on the toddler Rosnia, her face flushed with worry about her impending doom and fate. Rosnia looks at her black-haired brother, internally questioning his status as an insane genius villain. Shocked by his intelligence, the toddler notes that her brother is reading complex and difficult magic tomes. Silence fills the room as the boy pauses, his gaze lingering on the floor near his feet. Leaning in close, the black-haired boy asks his younger sister if she is feeling hungry. Narrative text questions how a toddler is supposed to train a sociopath like her older brother.
Overwhelmed by fear, Rosnia gives up on survival and begs for a quick end to her life.
In a sudden outburst, the toddler hurls her toy snake directly at her brother's young face. The snake hits its mark, and the boy stands in shadow with an ominous red glow. Trembling, Rosnia closes her eyes and prays for a painless death, wondering why her brother is silent. The boy asks if she wants to learn magic too, as she wonders why she attempted him. The black-haired boy kneels down, realizing that his younger sister truly shares his blood and potential. Picking her up, the boy tells Rosnia she is a genius as she internally questions his logic. Rosnia stares blankly as she is held, still processing the unexpected and confusing turn of events. Holding his sister over the desk, the boy tells her that learning magic will be quite easy.
The focus shifts to a complex magic book filled with diagrams, symbols, and very intricate script.
Rosnia questions her brother's sanity for expecting a toddler to master such advanced, complex magic tomes. Adrian looks down at his sister as she nervously wonders if he realized she actually understood. The young boy's red eyes burn with a focused and chilling intensity that demands absolute perfection. Sweating from the immense mental pressure, Rosnia celebrates surviving her brother's very first difficult academic test. Following the library incident, Adrian begins dragging Rosnia everywhere to witness his incredible displays of power. As the sun sets, the older brother carries his tiny sister through a vast mountainous terrain. A close-up shows Rosnia's wide pink eye reflecting the shifting world her brother is showing her. Their father announces his plan to take charge of Rosnia's education, noting her apparent eagerness. Adrian firmly takes Rosnia's hand, arrogantly claiming that she loves him and will follow his lead. Rosnia is internally outraged by Adrian's false claims, while their father expresses his delight at their bond. Adrian accepts his father's command, while Rosnia despairs over the terrifying, unintended direction of her upbringing.
Adrian places a hand on his sister's head, asserting his dominance over her current and future path.
Standing in the grand library, young Adrian holds a trembling Rosnia like a prized, fragile possession. Rosnia stares at her brother's back, resenting the future villain for the controlling life he is creating. Forced into a corner, Rosnia resolves to tame her brother to ensure her own survival and comfort. Years later, a grown Rosnia runs joyfully through a sunlit field, her pink hair catching the light. Now a young woman, Rosnia surveys the magnificent and sprawling architecture of her family's prestigious estate. Turning with a look of surprise, Rosnia embodies grace and beauty after her years of isolated upbringing. Adult Rosnia panics over her brother's overprotective sister complex, fearing she has been raised entirely wrong. Determined to escape her confinement, Rosnia sprints toward the main building, desperate for a summer holiday. Rosnia bursts into the study, shouting for her brother while he sits calmly at a grand desk. At 24, Adrian Hill has grown into a cold, handsome man with sharp features and red eyes. Rosnia protests Adrian's plan to investigate demonic beasts alone, demanding to be part of the journey. Now 20 years old, Rosnia strikes a dramatic and demanding pose, refusing to be left behind again. Well, that's one way to solve a door-knocking problem. Rosnia realizes her strength magic has become dangerously powerful. Adrian stares at the destruction while Rosnia cheekily blames him for installing such a flimsy, weak door. As they descend the stairs, Rosnia clarifies that she wants to relax at a villa, not hunt. Adrian contemplates his sister's request, remembering her deep disappointment from the previous year's missed summer vacation. From the shadows of the grand staircase, Adrian finally gives in and agrees to take her along. Rosnia's face lights up with pure joy at the prospect of finally leaving the family tower. When Adrian remains skeptical, Rosnia uses a bright declaration of love to seal the deal on their trip. Adrian blushes slightly and sets a firm rule that she must stay within the safety of the villa. The scene shifts to a towering white castle as Rosnia wonders what fateful encounters await her there. Finally reaching the destination, Rosnia revels in the beautiful weather and the freedom of the outdoors. Rosnia discards her shoes to feel the cool white foam of the ocean waves against her feet. Holding a shell to her ear, the pink-haired woman looks completely enchanted by the seaside's natural beauty. The golden hour light bathes the coastline as Rosnia's voice echoes through the air, demanding food. Adrian tries to focus on his book, but finds himself constantly interrupted by his sister's persistent hunger. Rosnia runs across the wet sand, waving her arms and calling out to her brother with excitement. Adrian questions her missing footwear, while Rosnia admits she has already forgotten where she left her shoes.
A look of sudden surprise flashes across Rosnia's face as she realizes her brother is approaching her.
Adrian lifts his sister off the sand, her bare feet dangling as he takes control of the situation. Carrying Rosnia in his arms, Adrian promises her a barbecue dinner if she can manage to be patient. As they walk along the shore, Rosnia reflects on how different this Adrian is from the original story. She smiles warmly, noting that despite his cold reputation, he hasn't actually done anything cruel to her. The scene briefly shows a king on his throne, hinting at the political undercurrents of the world. Rosnia looks forward to having the villa to herself, but admits she might miss her brother's presence. Hugging Adrian tightly, Rosnia enjoys the sunset, feeling secure despite the looming shadow of the original plot. Standing before the grand villa, Rosnia cheers for the first taste of true freedom she has had. Adrian shatters her joy with a dark threat to imprison her for a decade if she causes trouble. Standing by the gate, Rosnia bids her older brother a safe journey as morning light breaks. Adrian pauses at the entrance as Rosnia encourages him to take extra care during his trip. Adrian smirks while a narrative box notes that he is actually showing a visible reaction. Looking down at his sister's feet, Adrian warns her that she is the one who should be careful. Narrative text describes Adrian Hill as the world's most powerful master of the Central Magic Tower. The narration explains that every living creature in existence eventually crumbles beneath Adrian's terrifying mastery. Adrian gazes down at Rosnia as they stand together in the estate's sun-drenched gardens. Patting her head, Adrian commands her to stay at the villa. Rosnia internally fumes at being treated like a dog. Rosnia smiles while internally cursing her brother's overprotective nature as he continues to lecture her. Waving from the path, Rosnia asks her brother if the trip will take about a month. As the carriage departs, Rosnia cheers for her freedom, urging her brother to go and leave her be. Humming a happy tune, Rosnia walks through the estate, relishing the start of her solo vacation. Entering a grand room, Rosnia is startled to find a large, red-eyed, wolf-like beast waiting for her. Rosnia realizes the beast is Adrian's summon, sent to monitor her while he is away.
The beast enjoys being petted as it reacts with unexpected affection toward the pink-haired woman.
Determined to escape surveillance, Rosnia decides she must find a way to bribe the summoned creature. Rosnia looks at the beast with a playful smile as it stares back at her intently. A majestic white fox with multiple tails and a blue snake manifest in a swirling energy. A brown griffin-like beast with sharp talons lets out a loud, piercing cry in the library. Generating a glowing blue orb, Rosnia tells the sniffing beast that making mana orbs is easy. The beast stares at the magic orb with wide, sparkling eyes, completely entranced by its power. Holding the orb just out of reach, Rosnia teasingly asks the beast if it wants one. Rosnia reminds the creature that such a powerful mana source is far too precious to give away. The beast whimpers and looks incredibly sad as a narrative bubble notes its pathetic expression. Surprised by its behavior, Rosnia questions if her brother actually sent her a dog instead of a beast. Rosnia pets the large beast, attempting to negotiate a deal for its silence and cooperation. Setting the terms, Rosnia demands that the beast must not report her activities to Adrian without approval. To seal the deal, Rosnia offers to provide mana orbs throughout the summer if it agrees. The beast barks happily while Rosnia confirms the deal, effectively turning the guardian into her ally. Waving goodbye to her worries, Rosnia tells the beast to eat well and enjoy its treat. In a series of chibi panels, Rosnia asks if the beast wants to go to the market. Arriving at a market stall, Rosnia offers to buy the beast some fresh fruit skewers. Walking through the busy market, Rosnia wonders what kind of dog would actually enjoy eating fruit. Noticing the clouds, the beast observes that the sky is darkening and it might rain soon. Clutching her umbrella, Rosnia reflects on how hard she worked to win her current freedom. Enjoying their outing, Rosnia and the beast snack together as they explore the town's shops. Spotting a jewelry display, Rosnia excitedly points out a beautiful set of pearls to her companion. Rosnia views a chart comparing Magic Tower lunatics to normal people, lamenting her family's strange reputation. As the rain begins to fall, Rosnia decides it is time to return home to the villa. Running through the street, Rosnia notes that she correctly anticipated the rain and brought an umbrella. Rosnia and the beast dash through the estate gates as the heavy downpour drenches the landscape. Coming to a sudden halt, Rosnia looks down in surprise as a loud sound startles her. Rosnia stares in shock at the sight of an unconscious body lying on the wet pavement. Rain splashes against the pavement near a pale hand as the scene becomes increasingly grim. A man in a white shirt lies face down in the rain, completely motionless on the path. Looking at the fallen figure, Rosnia wonders who this mysterious person could possibly be. Rosnia stands over the body with her umbrella, her expression filled with bewilderment and shock. Rosnia questions if the man is a fugitive who happened to collapse on her family's estate. Observing his light hair and tall frame, Rosnia estimates the man's height to be around 185 centimeters. Poking the man with her foot, Rosnia contemplatively wonders if she should actually bother saving him. The mysterious man collapses onto the wet pavement as Rosnia's feet remain planted nearby. Standing beneath her lace umbrella, Rosnia watches the fallen stranger with a look of pure astonishment. Rainwater streams down the pale, handsome face of the unconscious man as he lies motionless. The fallen man's silver eyelashes flutter slightly as he remains trapped in a rain-soaked slumber. Surrounded by a shimmering, ethereal glow and white flowers, the silver-haired man lies in peaceful repose. Overwhelmed by the man's beauty, a flustered and blushing chibi Rosnia clutches her umbrella in shock. Rosnia looks down at the stranger, her initial surprise replaced by a sense of deep recognition. Adrian's spirit beast detects humans hostile to its master, which leads the pink-haired woman to conclude the stranger is related to Adrian while she questions his identity. Looking down at the unconscious stranger, the pink-haired woman realizes that his face is definitely one she has seen before. A sudden realization strikes Rosnia, causing her eyes to widen in shock as memories flood back. Narrative text confirms the scene is an imperial palace banquet held 4 years ago. Observing the scene from behind a railing at the banquet, the pink-haired woman confirms that the silver-haired man is indeed the one she remembers. In the memory, the silver-haired man stands with regal poise, his presence commanding the ballroom. Narrative text highlights that the silver-haired man shone brightly enough to dazzle from afar. Narrative text identifies the unconscious man lying on the ground as the story's male lead. The pink-haired woman identifies the man as a sworn enemy who kills her and her brother, expressing fear that his presence marks their impending doom. A vision shows the male lead embracing the original heroine in a palace. In a romantic scene, the male lead lifts the heroine in a passionate embrace. The original heroine looks into the male lead's eyes during a faded romantic moment. Narrative text identifies the silver-haired man as Ruwelen Rashien, the Empire's sole and powerful duke. Standing together in a moonlit garden, Ruwelen and the heroine embody the novel's romantic tragedy.
Narrative text describes his heart-rending desperation as a baseline temptation for the story's original heroine.
In a vision of the original novel, the silver-haired man begs the woman not to leave him while they are together in bed. Hovering over the woman in the vision, the silver-haired man tells her that she is his entire world. Leaning in close during the vision, the silver-haired man declares that without her, he is nothing. Narrative text describes his sweet nature as a source of constant butterflies for the reader.
A narrative box warns that Llewellyn is a yandere lead with extreme possessiveness.
Narrative text highlights his incredible techniques despite having never even hugged a girl before. In a flashback, the protagonist shouts about how much she loves the original story and its characters. The pink-haired woman recalls her past life obsession with Llewellyn and remembers dying after banging her head against the frame of her bed. Back in the rain, the black wolf growls at the unconscious and helpless Duke.
The narrative box explains she cannot bring an enemy into the family led by the villain Adrian, but the pink-haired woman decides she can because he is too hot to let die. Using her magic to lift his wet shirt, the pink-haired woman tells the unconscious man that he should thank his face for saving him. As she walks away, the pink-haired woman tells the growling beast to be quiet or she will not give it a mana ball.
Inside the villa, the pink-haired woman notes that she has successfully managed to get his wet shirt off.
Standing over the man on the sofa, the pink-haired woman wonders how she is supposed to deal with his pants.
The pink-haired woman admires his physique, questioning if every male lead is supposed to look this incredible.
Llewellyn lies in a deep sleep, his handsome face peaceful despite his current circumstances.
The firelight dances across the Duke's well-defined muscles as he remains unconscious on the sofa.
Admiring him from afar, the pink-haired woman admits that she would totally fall for him if she saw him often. The pink-haired woman questions how to remove his clothes alone, considering leaving his pants and underwear on.
The pink-haired woman worries that he might catch a cold before suddenly remembering that she can use her magic. Feeling overwhelmed by the handsome Duke, the pink-haired woman decides to magic off his lower clothes and dress his top, because putting pants on with magic is an advanced skill.
Casting a quick glance back, Rosnia activates magic to finish dressing the unconscious man. With a surge of magic, the Duke's wet clothes are replaced by a clean shirt.
Highlighted by glowing magic, the focus shifts to the Duke's muscular legs after Rosnia's spell.
A narrative bubble humorously notes that the Duke's muscles seem to have very serious opinions. The pink-haired woman observes that the shirt is so short on him that it looks more like a mini dress. The pink-haired woman decides to take him to a first-floor bedroom, hoping that he will not mind the lack of underwear. As the man groans in pain, the pink-haired woman offers him fever medicine and tells him to drink every drop.
Rosnia notices the Duke's fever has spiked while she tries to administer medicine.
The silver-haired man lies in bed, sweating profusely and appearing very weak.
Rosnia thinks the Duke's beauty is deadly as she stares at his unconscious face. Rosnia realizes she spilled a little medicine and reacts with surprise while tending to him.
A large, pale hand suddenly reaches out and firmly grips a smaller wrist.
The silver-haired man abruptly grabs Rosnia's arm and reacts with a look of confusion. Startled by his sudden movement, Rosnia gasps in shock and wonders what is going on. In a sudden motion, the silver-haired man pulls Rosnia toward him into a tight embrace.
The Duke grips Rosnia's long pink hair tightly as he holds her close to him.
The silver-haired man's eye slowly opens, revealing a clear and focused gaze.
Looking up at her, the silver-haired man speaks directly to Rosnia while still holding her.
The Duke notes that Rosnia saved him, and she admits she couldn't leave him there. Llewellyn explains that he would have died in the storm and notes his poor condition. Rosnia gazes down at him with an expression of deep concern and growing fascination.
Breathing heavily from exhaustion, the silver-haired man continues to clutch Rosnia to his chest.
Llewellyn politely asks Rosnia for her name while they remain in a very close position.
Rosnia rests her hand on his chest and reacts with a soft, surprised sound. A narrative thought bubble questions if Rosnia should actually reveal her true identity to him.
Rosnia hesitates, internally debating whether or not she should tell him that her name is Rosnia Hill.
Rosnia realizes she saved him and hopes he might hate her family less because of it. Chibi Rosnia hopes that playing her cards right will help her avoid the original dead ending. Hesitating for a moment, Rosnia prepares to introduce herself to the silver-haired Duke.
Looking directly at him, the pink-haired woman clearly states her name as Rosnia Hill. The silver-haired man calmly states that he already knew exactly who she was. Rosnia cries out in surprise as the Duke makes another sudden and assertive movement. Llewellyn sits up in bed and pulls Rosnia into a very firm and possessive embrace. Llewellyn asks if she knows him and asserts that he certainly knows Rosnia Hill.
The silver-haired man looks at her with a gentle, warm smile that catches Rosnia off guard. Rosnia agrees nervously while her heart races at how handsome the Duke looks up close.
Leaning in close to her face, the silver-haired man asks if she knows his identity.
The reflection of the handsome silver-haired man is clearly visible in Rosnia's wide pink eye. Rosnia identifies him as Duke Ruellen Rashien while internally panicking at their extreme proximity. The Duke's hand remains firmly planted on Rosnia's back as he continues to hold her. Overwhelmed by the situation, Rosnia looks away with a flustered and blushing face. Rosnia stammeringly explains that he is simply too memorable and handsome to ever forget. A radiant glow surrounds the Duke as he smiles warmly while still embracing the pink-haired woman. Flowers bloom around the Duke's smiling face, enhancing his already incredible and dazzling beauty. Rosnia stares in stunned silence, completely captivated by the silver-haired man's charming presence. Rosnia points out they only met once and calls him unforgettable because he is so handsome. The silver-haired man maintains his gentle smile as he gazes affectionately at the flustered woman. Rosnia panics internally, wondering why he keeps smiling like he is trying to seduce her. While trying to wiggle free, Rosnia tells herself that she needs to get out of his arms. The silver-haired man's head drops as he lets out a long, heavy breath of exhaustion. Weakened by fever, the Duke leans his head against Rosnia's shoulder for support. Ruellen breathes heavily against her neck, causing Rosnia to panic at the unexpected contact. The Duke groans in pain as Rosnia urgently calls out to him in alarm. Ruellen completely collapses against Rosnia, his strength failing as he holds on to her one last time. Ruellen calls her Rose, leaving Rosnia shocked that he just used a familiar nickname. Alone in the quiet room, Rosnia timidly tries to get the Duke's attention again. A narrative thought bubble questions why the Duke is acting so strangely familiar with her. Rosnia stammers the Duke's name as he suddenly pulls her into a tight, silent embrace. Ruellen groans that he is not feeling well and explains that it is hard to breathe. Rosnia panics, thinking he's not himself because he's throwing around nicknames like it is absolutely nothing. Realizing his forehead is burning like fire, Rosnia urgently asks where exactly the silver-haired man hurts. The Duke breathes heavily, telling Rosnia that his body hurts so much it feels like dying. Rosnia asks if he has a body-wide ache, suspecting the symptoms point to a dangerous mana overload. Narrator text identifies the original novel title as The Duke's One and Only Mate During His Crisis. The narration explains that only one specific person can hope to calm the Duke's surging, rampaging mana. A romantic vision depicts the silver-haired man and the original heroine together in an intimate, moonlit garden. Rosnia panics about him having an overload with her in Adrian's bedroom instead of the female lead. Rosnia stares in shock, desperately wondering what she should do if the story follows the original path. The scene shifts to a glowing, mystical book surrounded by delicate white flowers and ethereal orbs. In a romantic vision, the silver-haired man and the original heroine share a deep and passionate kiss. The intimate vision continues as the two figures embrace closely amidst a background of sparkling light. A text bubble reveals Rosnia's frustration that this is happening with her instead of with Sierra. Ruellen gazes at her with a flushed face and begs Rose not to leave his side. Rosnia feels she's in serious trouble as the silver-haired man pulls her into a firm, desperate embrace. The silver-haired man leans in very close, his breath hitching while he looks directly at Rosnia's lips. Rosnia realizes that being alone with him during a mana overload is becoming an extremely dangerous situation. Rosnia feels completely screwed as the silver-haired man continues to hold her tightly in the quiet room. The silver-haired man's hand reaches up to gently caress Rosnia's cheek as he pulls her closer. Ruellen's fingers trail down her jaw while he continues to gaze at her with a feverish longing. Large text asks, "Kiss me?" over a backdrop of beautiful, blooming roses and soft golden light. The silver-haired man pulls her in close, his face inches from hers as he gazes at her. A narrative box mentions reading the original story while a purple-haired chibi character stands on a book. An image shows the silver-haired man's rampaging magic, warning that it will eventually consume his life. Large text declares that the rampaging magic will kill him if it is not properly managed soon. Rosnia reflects on the tragedy of such a handsome man like Llewellyn dying in such a way. Rosnia firmly decides that she cannot allow him to die, even if it complicates her own life. Sitting on the bed, Rosnia notes that getting involved with the lead is something she should avoid. The silver-haired man looks at her with a pained expression and declares he will die without her. Rosnia asks about his condition while panicking that she will end up seriously entangled with the lead. Ruellen collapses against Rosnia's shoulder as she asks if his condition is truly that hard to bear. Rosnia notes his cheeks are on fire while the silver-haired man desperately pleads for her to stay. The Duke pulls her onto the bed and pleads for Rosnia to save him from his suffering. Rosnia's eyes widen as she wonders if the silver-haired man is really going to die right now. A chibi Rosnia cries out that he can't die because he's supposed to meet the original heroine. The silver-haired man pulls Rosnia closer, his face turning toward hers in a sudden, decisive motion. Surrounded by blooming roses, Rosnia tells the silver-haired man to just kiss her for now for relief. The silver-haired man agrees to start with just a kiss, catching Rosnia off guard with his compliance. Chibi Rosnia is confused, wondering if they are even having the same conversation about his condition. Rosnia tells herself they should just kiss as she leans in closer to the handsome silver-haired man. The silver-haired man closes his eyes and pulls her into a soft, lingering, and very gentle kiss. Ruellen pulls Rosnia into a tight embrace as they share a deep and very passionate kiss. The silver-haired man's hand rests on her back as they continue their intimate and romantic moment together. A large hand presses against Rosnia's face as she reacts with a sudden look of complete surprise. The silver-haired man pulls back slightly, his fingers lingering near her mouth as he watches her intently. Ruellen leans in to finish the kiss as they continue their intimate moment on the bed together. The scene shows the silver-haired man moving closer to the pink-haired woman during their deep embrace. Rosnia falls back onto the bed with a look of pure shock as the kiss finally ends. Ruellen gazes at Rosnia, his face flushed with the heat of the moment. Delicate flowers bloom, underscoring the romantic and charged atmosphere of the quiet room. Rosnia asks if they really have to proceed this way, and Ruellen confirms the necessity. The two share a passionate embrace as they continue their intimate moment on the bed. Amidst the beauty of the room, a lingering question arises about the Duke's true condition. Shimmering magic continues to pulse through the room as the fated encounter unfolds. Ruellen remains close to Rosnia, the bedsheets glowing under the influence of his mana. Rosnia reflects on how she thought everything would stop once his condition settled down. Feeling overwhelmed, Rosnia wonders why his intense actions show no signs of stopping. A realization strikes that the Duke's rampaging magic had actually calmed down long ago. The quiet interior of the villa stands still while the night's events continue. Pinned beneath the Duke, Rosnia looks up and questions him as he continues to lean. Looking directly into her eyes, Ruellen simply confirms her presence by calling her name. Rosnia protests and asks the Duke to wait as he continues their intimate kiss. Rosnia insults the Duke's intelligence and panics about the potential loss of her chastity. Rosnia worries about the original heroine's place and questions why she is being targeted. Ruellen sits up slightly, asserting his dominance by holding Rosnia's wrists firmly above her. A look of surprise crosses Rosnia's face as the Duke makes an unexpected move. Rosnia's eyes widen as she tries to process the strange shift in Duke's behavior. Rosnia expresses concern and asks why the Duke looks so pained and hurt. The silver-haired man calls out her name with a very sad and longing expression. Rosnia attempts to end their encounter by telling the Duke they have done enough. The Duke pulls Rosnia into a firm embrace, refusing to let her leave his side. Ruellen looks down with a somber expression, his heart heavy with unspoken emotions. Rosnia expresses her discomfort, stating that their current relationship is not appropriate or right. The Duke questions why their relationship isn't right while reflecting on her previous statement. A heavy silence fills the air as they sit together on the edge of bed. Ruellen asks if he stirred her impulses and concludes that his actions likely did. Ruellen questions her further about his previous assumption while maintaining a very close proximity. The Duke offers a charming smile that leaves Rosnia feeling more flustered than ever. Ruellen reaches out to gently stroke Rosnia's long pink hair in a quiet gesture. Flowers bloom around the Duke's handsome face as he continues to smile at her. Rosnia panics at his beauty and tells him to sleep as she prepares to flee. Rosnia dashes toward the door, leaving the Duke sitting alone in the middle bed. A chibi Duke with dog ears whimpers pathetically as he watches Rosnia leave room. Rosnia tells the Duke he needs to rest because he was caught in the rain. Standing alone, Rosnia blushes deeply while thinking about the intense encounter she just experienced. Ruellen lies in the quiet bedroom, the soft light highlighting his calm, handsome features. The Duke's bright green eyes glow in the darkness as he reflects on night. The villa stands peaceful and silent beneath a vast sky filled with bright stars. An unseen subordinate questions if there has been any recent word from the missing Duke. A voice from the military camp questions if it's becoming too late for their leader. The Knight Commander, Bilky, tells his companion that they must wait for Duke patiently. The Knight Commander, Bilky, focuses on cleaning his massive sword while waiting for leader. The Knight complains about the boredom and Bilky suggests he hold back during sparring practice. The blonde-haired man notes that the Duke breaks his bones and he enjoys the experience. The blonde-haired man smiles brightly, appearing completely unbothered by the Duke's potential for violence. Bilky clarifies the official reason for his statement and tells the other knight to train. Night falls over the grand estate, signaling the end of a long, eventful day. Rosnia notes that she purchased several new outfits for the Duke to wear later on. Rosnia stretches while reflecting on the dramatic day she just experienced at the villa. Looking toward the bedroom, Rosnia wonders if Ruellen has finally fallen into a deep sleep. Rosnia gazes out the window, firmly deciding there will never be a next time. A chibi Rosnia shouts about her past life obsessions and refuses to suffer lovesickness again. Seeking to calm her racing heart, Rosnia decides to prepare herself a relaxing warm bath. Rosnia plans her bath and kitchen trip, unaware of the impending encounter awaiting her. Turning toward the kitchen, Rosnia is suddenly paralyzed by a shadowy figure in the darkness.
Startled by the unexpected presence, Rosnia clutches her chest while a purple-haired chibi looks on.
Ruellen stands before Rosnia, his open robe revealing his physique as he towers over her.
Rosnia gasps in shock as the silver-haired man appears suddenly in the dimly lit hallway.
Ruellen speaks her nickname with a gentle tone while standing tall in his dark robe. Looking up at him, Rosnia asks if he was asleep and wonders why he is awake. Chibi Rosnia screams in embarrassment, realizing she is seeing much more of him than intended. While trying to retreat, Rosnia's foot slips on the wet floor, causing her to lose balance.
A flash of movement shows the Duke reaching out to steady the falling pink-haired woman.
Ruellen catches Rosnia in a firm embrace, his strong arms preventing her from hitting the floor. Pinned against his chest, Rosnia looks up at the silver-haired man with wide, startled eyes. Ruellen explains that he woke up and decided to wash, apologizing for using the bathroom. Rosnia accepts his apology, but asks if he used cold water, which he used for calming.
Rosnia blushes intensely and tells the Duke to put on some clothes as she hides her face.
Ruellen acknowledges her request and calmly informs her that he will be on his way.
The Duke walks past the flustered Rosnia, his presence filling the quiet and shadowy room.
Ruellen asks if she needs help, but Rosnia rejects the offer with a loud, frantic shout.
The silver-haired man offers a playful smile as he watches her react to his suggestive offer.
A narrative thought bubble questions if Rosnia was actually planning to assist the Duke's bath.
Rosnia stands alone by the pillars, appearing completely overwhelmed by the Duke's sudden, bold behavior.
Rosnia blushes deeply, questioning if the male lead is actually a beast wearing a handsome face. The scene shifts to the quiet tea set as the night passes in the silent villa. Rosnia walks through the hall, asking the Duke why he continues to follow her every move. Rosnia glances back at the Duke with a mix of suspicion and lingering, flustered embarrassment. Ruellen maintains a warm, innocent smile while continuing to trail behind the pink-haired woman.
Rosnia reflects on the possibility that the Duke has gone insane from his recent mana overload.
Rosnia recalls the long-standing rivalry between the Hill and Rashian families as their crests appear. Rosnia laments her accidental rescue of the Duke and the complication of calming his rampaging mana.
Rosnia clutches her head in distress, wondering how the Rashian family will take this news.
Looking at the tea, Ruellen notes that he has recovered a great deal thanks to her. Rosnia acknowledges his recovery while the Duke continues to watch her with an intense gaze. Panicking as the Duke gets closer, Rosnia wonders why he won't maintain a respectful distance. Rosnia lets out a cry as she slips once more while trying to back away. A narrative bubble declares she is going to fall again as she loses her balance completely. A sudden, bright flash fills the room as the characters move together in a blur. Ruellen catches Rosnia and pulls her close, their faces inches apart in the soft light. The Duke holds Rosnia's head and body firmly, preventing her from falling to the floor. A close-up focus on Rosnia's pink eye highlights her shock at their current extreme proximity. Ruellen leans in toward Rosnia, the atmosphere between them charging with a sudden romantic tension. The two figures share a close embrace as they lean toward one another in the moonlight. Ruellen's green eyes focus intently on Rosnia as he moves in for a final kiss. Ruellen pulls Rosnia into a deep and passionate kiss, finally yielding to his long-suppressed desires. A chibi character smiles while the title of the story appears in large purple letters. Narrative text notes that time itself seemed to disappear as the two remained in their embrace. Ruellen calls her by her nickname, while Rosnia breathlessly acknowledges him as the Duke.
Ruellen pulls Rosnia into a firm embrace and shares a deep and passionate kiss.
The silver-haired man and pink-haired woman embrace tightly in the middle of the kitchen. Ruellen leans in to continue their kiss, while Rosnia looks up with a flushed face. Gazing into his eyes, Rosnia internally expresses sympathy for the story's original heroine, Sierra. Ruellen kisses her cheek as he watches her with an intense and focused green-eyed gaze. Ruellen pulls back slightly, looking at her with a lingering desire while holding her head. The silver-haired man stares forward with a flushed face and a dazed, intoxicated expression. A warm and gentle smile spreads across the Duke's face, amidst a backdrop of flowers. Rosnia trembles while realizing that her actions have changed the course of the original story. Ruellen suddenly pulls Rosnia into a very firm and possessive embrace in the quiet room. Stunned by the contact, Rosnia stares blankly while being held tightly by the silver-haired man.
Rosnia's eyes widen in shock as the Duke continues to hold her in silence.
Rosnia panics about her actions while noting that the Duke is not budging at all. Ruellen apologizes for his behavior while Rosnia looks at him with a very startled expression. Holding her close, Ruellen decisively declares that this kind of situation will not happen again. A close-up focus on Ruellen's eye highlights his intense and lingering focus on Rosnia. Ruellen leans in and speaks a soft, direct message meant only for the pink-haired woman. The silver-haired Duke offers a gentle, affectionate smile that catches the blushing Rosnia off guard. Radiant light surrounds Ruelin as he looks down with a content and dazzlingly handsome smile. A chibi Rosnia blinks in total confusion, wondering why the Duke is suddenly laughing now. Ruelin smirks with satisfaction, stating that the current turn of events feels truly rewarding. Chibi Ruelin dismisses a concern as nothing, while Chibi Rosnia remains completely baffled and suspicious. Ruelin's open robe reveals his chest as he prepares to make another bold movement. Rosnia lets out a loud, panicked shout of refusal while her face turns bright red. Ruelin maintains a calm, playful smile while continuing to watch the flustered pink-haired woman. The Duke takes a purposeful step forward as the two stand close together on the rug. A purple-haired character cries while a message encourages the reader to continue the story. Ruelin reaches out to gently touch Rosnia's long pink hair in a very quiet gesture. Bringing her hair to his lips, Ruelin offers a soft, romantic kiss to the pink strands. Ruelin tells Rosnia to sleep well as the night passes over the grand, silent villa. Rosnia sits up in bed, urgently thinking she must get up before he causes trouble. Chibi Rosnia runs through the hall, stopping when she sees a large black dog waiting. Rosnia sighs in relief that the Duke is asleep, while the dog's tail wags happily. Rosnia peeks through the doorway, her large pink eyes wide with caution and growing curiosity. Ruelin lies asleep in bed, surrounded by a romantic framing of yellow and pink flowers. Standing by the bed, Rosnia quietly tells the Duke to wake up because it's morning. Ruelin remains asleep, his expression peaceful as the soft morning light hits his face. Ruelin suddenly grabs Rosnia's arm, causing her to scream in surprise as she's pulled. Ruelin pulls Rosnia onto the bed, trapping her in a firm and very close embrace. Pinned beneath the Duke, Rosnia gasps in shock at the sudden and intimate physical contact. Ruelin rolls over and pulls Rosnia into a tight hug, causing her to cry out. Rosnia panics about his strange sleeping habits as Ruelin kisses her shoulder while still asleep. A close-up shows Rosnia's hands clenched into fists against Ruelin's dark patterned robe. Ruelin's green eyes slowly open as he remains very close to the flustered woman. Rosnia looks up with a flushed face and heavy breathing, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. Ruelin sits up suddenly, his face flushing deep red as he realizes their current position. Ruelin looks down at her and explains he was half asleep and thought it was a dream. Ruelin looks away sheepishly, his face still flushed as he avoids Rosnia's direct gaze. Rosnia internally swoons over his cuteness while worrying about being so easily swayed by him. Rosnia instructs the Duke to wash up and eat breakfast while noting she will be in the living room. Ruelin nods obediently while offering a very charming smile, appearing completely unbothered by the request. Rosnia's internal thought bubble declares that the Duke is a very sly man. A peaceful morning begins as birds chirp near a decorative sunlit fountain in the garden. Surrounded by blooming flowers, Rosnia looks radiant and cheerful as the new day begins. Rosnia asks the Duke if the meal suited his taste, and he confirms that it did. The Duke moves in extremely close to Rosnia, surprising her with his sudden and intimate proximity. Ruelin flirts by saying he was too distracted watching her to notice the food's taste, making Rosnia panic. Chibi Rosnia wants to pinch the Duke, wondering why he continues to smile so sweetly at her. The sound of rushing water fills the air as the scene transitions toward the coastal landscape. The pair walks together along the shore, their figures small against the vast and sparkling ocean. Rosnia wonders if the Duke is simply the type of person who naturally smiles a lot. Ruelin calls the men staring at Rosnia bastards, leaving her shocked by his sudden use of harsh language. Rosnia looks confused, her pink eyes wide as she questions what exactly the Duke is reacting to. Nearby men sneak glances at the couple, confirming Ruelin's protective suspicion about their wandering eyes. The group of men whisper together while continuing to gaze toward the beautiful pink-haired woman. The men react with visible shock as they are caught staring by the protective and intense Duke. Rosnia realizes they were staring and feels relieved her brother, Adrian, is not there to witness it. Rosnia imagines Adrian raising hell and offering to pluck out the eyes of anyone who dared to look. A sudden chill sweeps through the area, leaving Rosnia confused by the unexpected change in the atmosphere. Ruelin's aura turns cold and menacing, terrifying the men who were previously staring at his companion. A quick flash of movement signals a hasty retreat from the Duke's intimidating and dark behavior. The pair continues their walk along the beach, moving together toward the bright water's edge. Ruelin asks Rosnia if she finds his face pleasing to look at while they walk. Rosnia laughs while noting that anyone in the world would find his handsome face attractive. Rosnia turns the question back on the Duke, asking what he truly thinks of her in return. A decorative bubble poses the question of what the Duke thinks of her amidst a floral backdrop. Rosnia wonders how she measures up in the eyes of someone with the Duke's refined taste. Rosnia panics when the Duke hesitates, fearing her appearance isn't his type or he is dodging her. The scene focuses on their boots and dress as they stand together on the soft sand. Llewellyn replies with a single word, declaring that her presence is always pleasing to him. A decorative box describes Rosnia as an utterly enchanting presence amidst a backdrop of pink flowers. They share a quiet, intense gaze, the space between them filled with a sudden romantic tension. The Duke gently holds Rosnia's hand while they stand together in the bright coastal light. A close-up of Llewellyn's green eye highlights his deep and focused attention on the pink-haired woman. Llewellyn notes that she would have helped him regardless, and he knows her well enough to know that much. Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a close embrace against a dramatic background of dark, thorny roses. Ethereal bubbles and sparkling lights surround the pair as they share their quiet, intimate moment. At sunset, they return to the villa as Llewellyn calls out Rosnia's nickname in the fading light. Rosnia is shocked when the Duke offers to cook, noting that people would faint if they knew. The silver-haired man smiles broadly, appearing confident and pleased with his offer to prepare a meal. Llewellyn tells Rosnia to wash up while he prepares everything, and she obediently complies. Rosnia wonders what is happening, as the male lead cooking was never part of the original story. Rosnia enjoys the meal with delight, finding it genuinely delicious as she sits at the dinner table. Llewellyn rests his head on his hand and watches her eat with a fond and satisfied smile. The Duke leans in and gives Rosnia a soft, affectionate kiss on her flushed cheek. Rosnia is completely bewildered, her face flushing red from the repeated and unexpected displays of affection. Rosnia questions if the Duke is losing control of his magic again during their dinner together. Rosnia asks him to wait for a moment while Llewellyn continues to smile at her charmingly. Llewellyn gently caresses Rosnia's cheek, gazing at her with a look of pure and deep devotion. Rosnia blushes deeply while staring up at the Duke with a shocked, breathless expression. Llewellyn sits beside Rosnia on a bench, holding her hand while gazing at her intently. Llewellyn looks toward the ground with a somber expression, waiting for Rosnia's response. A narrative bubble poses a direct question about whether she wants the Duke to leave. Rosnia explains her long absence and decisively states she will not return to the estate. Llewellyn admits he has yet to win over her heart in the way he desires. Rosnia grows suspicious of the Duke's kindness, wondering if he has a hidden, ulterior motive. Claiming she feels unwell, Rosnia attempts to flee while Llewellyn calls out her nickname. Rosnia quickly exits the room, leaving the silver-haired man sitting alone on the bench. Rosnia suggests that the Duke should also get some rest as she continues her retreat. Llewellyn stands alone in the dark hallway, his tall figure surrounded by drifting light particles. Collapsed on her bed, Rosnia prays that the rest of the night passes peacefully. Rosnia questions the large black dog, asking if it is seeking her glowing mana orb. The black dog howls as a translucent blue sphere floats above its wide-open jaws. Rosnia is struck by a sudden, terrifying realization that the dog might actually be Adrian. A purple-haired chibi character floats above a promotional message for the continuing series. Rosnia sits on her bed, her eyes wide with shock as she processes new information. A jagged narrative bubble screams about a 10-day deadline that has left Rosnia completely panicked. Rosnia worries about the impending deadline and hopes that no further trouble occurs until then. A chibi Rosnia cries out in despair, fearing she is doomed because of Llewellyn's actions. Rosnia contemplates secretly contacting the Duchy of Lescione while worrying about her brother finding out. Overwhelmed by the dramatic mess, Rosnia decides she must send a reply to her brother. A close-up shows Rosnia's hand near a floating pink bubble while she speaks to herself. Watching the black dog, Rosnia reminds herself she has 7 days left to stay alert. Rosnia doubts the Duke's honesty, wondering if he is merely pretending to be mentally unstable. Narrative boxes explain that Rosnia must maintain her suspicion and watch the Duke very closely. Rosnia lets out a long, weary sigh as she reflects on her current, exhausting situation. Through a glass door, the morning sun illuminates Rosnia standing beside the large black dog. An owl hoots from a tree as night falls over the quiet, multi-story villa. Waking up in a daze, Rosnia wonders if she accidentally dozed off during the night. Still half asleep, Rosnia questions why the bed feels unusually hard against her body. Rosnia's eyes widen in horror as she realizes she is lying on top of someone. Llewellyn lies in bed beneath Rosnia, his expression calm as she stares at him in shock. Llewellyn notes that she pushed him away previously while they remain in their intimate position. A chibi Rosnia is utterly confused, realizing she isn't even in her own bedroom. Llewellyn grips the bedsheets while reminding her they have been like this from the start. Rosnia is startled when the Duke reaches out to gently tilt her face toward him. Llewellyn declares he will never let her go, claiming she should have let him die. The two characters share a long, silent gaze as the distance between their faces vanishes. Framed by blooming roses, Llewellyn and Rosnia share a soft and romantic morning kiss. Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a firm embrace as they lie together on the rumpled bed. While embracing her, the silver-haired Duke asks Rosnia why she is behaving in this manner. Llewellyn offers a small smile and mentions there is something he is curious to know. Ruellen asks if she is experienced, noting that her kiss was surprisingly and impressively good.
A heavy silence fills the room as they both sit up, appearing completely stunned. Ruellen admits his confusion while Rosnia remains speechless, her face flushed with deep embarrassment.
I thought Bubble asks if she has ever participated in such an intimate act before.
Ruellen suddenly grabs Rosnia's wrist, causing her to cry out his title in sheer surprise.
The Duke clutches his chest while asking for clarification as a chibi character looks on. Rosnia looks on in horror, wondering if the Duke is actually angry at her question.
Ruellen stares forward with a flushed face, appearing deeply moved and slightly breathless in the soft light.
Chibi Rosnia asks if he is the popular Duke, while Chibi Ruellen remains silent and intensely blushing.
The silver-haired man gazes away with a melancholic expression, his profile bathed in soft, ethereal light.
Rosnia sits on the bed, her pink eyes wide as she looks up at the man. The two characters sit close together on the rumpled sheets, the air thick with sudden romantic tension. Ruellen leans toward Rosnia, their foreheads almost touching as they share a quiet and very intimate moment. A close-up focus on Ruellen's green eye highlights his intense and unwavering focus on the woman. Chibi Rosnia apologizes for her rudeness, while Chibi Ruellen gently responds that he understands and it's okay.
Ruellen expresses his unease about their unclear status, while Rosnia admits that is exactly what bothers her.
Rosnia internally questions why Ruellen would feel uneasy as she watches him sitting alone on the bed. Ruellen maintains a calm but serious gaze, his silver hair catching the ambient and cool room light.
A narrative bubble highlights Rosnia's firm determination to finally get a straightforward answer from the Duke.
Rosnia hardens her expression, appearing resolute as she prepares to confront the enigmatic, silver-haired man. Ruellen remains silent, looking down with a somber and somewhat mysterious expression on his handsome face.
Rosnia sits upright on the bed, her posture stiff as she waits for the Duke's next movement.
Ruellen dismisses the importance of the topic, his expression remaining neutral and perhaps a bit too evasive.
Voices argue about avoiding the question while someone claims they do not remember, causing a sudden confusion.
Ruellen claims he remembers nothing, leaving Rosnia with a shocked, confused, and slightly annoyed expression.
Ruellen admits he has no idea what happened, looking down with a dazed and intoxicated expression.
Gently holding a lock of her hair, Ruellen states he does not want to return to the estate. Ruellen continues to stroke her pink hair, noting that from what he can tell, everything has changed. Pulling her into a close embrace, Ruellen asks Rosnia if she will finally let him stay near. Ruellen whispers his desire to touch and kiss her while continuing to hold her very close. The silver-haired man and pink-haired woman share a passionate and intimate embrace on the bed.
A purple-haired chibi character smiles while a message encourages the reader to continue the romantic story.
The chapter number appears above a scenic view of the grand villa under a starry sky.
The view shifts from the empty hallway to a close-up of Rosnia's long, flowing pink hair. Ruellen's bare chest is revealed as he stands in the soft light, looking down very thoughtfully.
The shirtless Duke leans over the bed where Rosnia lies, reaching out to touch her head. Ruellen gently caresses the sleeping Rosnia's hair, his expression filled with a quiet and intense devotion.
Ruellen tells Rosnia to stay still and be a good girl as she looks up at him.
Ruellen offers a content and handsome smile as he looks down at the flustered pink-haired woman. Chibi Rosnia mumbles about being hungry while she remains fast asleep under the soft bed covers.
Ruellen freezes in place, his expression turning sharp and alert as he hears something quite unexpected.
Ruellen's expression darkens as the sleeping Rosnia calls out for her brother, Adrian, in her sleep. A narrative flashback shows Adrian standing protectively in front of Rosnia before a grand and glowing castle. A split panel highlights the contrast between the dark-haired Adrian and the silver-haired Ruellen's intense expressions. A narrative box declares a possessive desire to rip away every memory Adrian has of the woman.
Ruellen sits on the edge of the bed, watching the sleeping Rosnia with a troubled gaze.
Narrative text notes Ruellen's desire to claim every part of Rosnia's life, from beginning to end. Rosnia appears radiant and smiling, surrounded by a vibrant garden of yellow and white flowers. Ruellen stares forward with a dazed and intoxicated expression, his green eyes shimmering with deep emotion. A close-up focus on Ruellen's eyes highlights his lingering and obsessive focus on the woman before him. The scene transitions through a frame of blooming white and purple flowers under a bright sky. Castle Rishian stands grand and imposing, surrounded by the beautiful blooming lilacs of an early summer. A narrative box recalls a day when, at age 13, the protagonist gave into impulse. A close-up shows a young girl's shoes kicking up dust as she runs toward an exit. A young girl with blonde hair runs frantically toward the massive ornate gates of a garden. An attendant presents a birthday gift to a young Ruellen as he sits at a grand desk. The young, silver-haired Duke stares ahead with a cold, vacant expression, appearing entirely unmoved by the gift. Narrative text reflects on the recurring pity shown by others on his birthday, May 25th. An attendant delivers a reply while a narrative box recounts the cruel gossip regarding his parents' deaths. The young, silver-haired Duke stares ahead with a cold, vacant expression, appearing entirely unmoved by his surroundings. Llewellyn leans back in his chair with his feet up, dismissively declaring the entire situation to be nonsense. A focus on the youth's eyes accompanies text stating that no one can truly understand his burden. Piles of colorful, unopened birthday gifts clutter the floor as the silver-haired youth moves away from his desk. A young, blonde-haired youth runs through the sunlit grounds, their face glowing with a sudden sense of purpose. The blonde-haired youth gazes upward with a hopeful smile, enjoying the bright and blooming summer morning. From a high window, the youth watches a massive steam train pulling into the busy station below. Looking out at the tracks, the blonde-haired youth marvels at the incredible speed of magic crystal trains. A text box identifies the location as Ives Station, situated in the southern part of the Rachiane Duchy. As the blonde-haired youth walks across the platform, they begin to recall information about this specific area. The blonde-haired youth confidently thinks that the local mages are not powerful enough to pose a threat. A dark warning declares that certain individuals view his grace as nothing more than a valuable test subject. The silver-haired Llewellyn stares forward with a stoic expression while glowing energy crackles in the foreground. A magical orb surges with power while text explains his rare double gift and the danger of capture. A jagged text bubble expresses bold defiance, claiming no fear of trash like the powerful Hill family. The scene shifts to a grand white villa nestled among green trees under a clear, bright sky. Sunlight spills over the ornate gates and stone pathway leading into the expansive and beautiful garden estate. Captivated by the beauty, the blonde-haired youth decides it wouldn't hurt to explore the grounds briefly. Vaulting over the wall, the youth wonders if the beautiful exterior hides something sinister plotting within. The youth walks through the lush manicured maze, eventually spotting a figure with vibrant pink hair. Sitting alone on a white garden bench, a young pink-haired girl is deeply absorbed in a book. The pink-haired girl remains still and quiet, framed by blooming white and yellow roses in the gazebo. A close-up focus on the blonde youth's green eye highlights their intense curiosity about the stranger. The blonde youth approaches the gazebo where the mysterious pink-haired girl is still sitting and reading. The blonde youth pauses with a flushed face and wide eyes, their heart racing during the encounter. Framed by white roses, the two children stand in the garden as the summer breeze drifts between them. The pink-haired girl sits with her eyes closed, appearing peaceful and unaware of the intruder's close proximity. Observing her closely, the blonde-haired youth realizes they are looking at the daughter of the Tower Master. The blonde-haired youth wonders if the girl is already being trained in the arts of dark magic. Stepping closer, the blonde youth leans over the pink-haired girl's shoulder to see what she is reading. The blonde youth is struck with total shock as they finally get a look at the book's contents. Instead of spells, the book is filled with colorful, detailed illustrations of delicious ice cream and cakes. The blonde youth laughs at the discovery while the pink-haired girl begins to stir and wake up. The pink-haired girl suddenly opens her eyes, revealing large, striking magenta irises that look directly at the intruder. A close-up highlights the girl's wide, pink eyes as she focuses on the blonde-haired youth standing beside her. The pink-haired girl hops down from the bench with a nimble movement, surprising the other youth. A chibi pink-haired girl strikes a bunny pose, causing the blonde youth to let out a startled cry. The chibi girl performs a rhythmic dance while the blonde youth looks on with total confusion and bafflement. The blonde youth questions if she is truly a noble lady, while the pink-haired girl yawns loudly. The pink-haired girl asks who the visitor is, wondering if they are the daughter of a visiting maid. Surrounded by roses, the pink-haired girl offers a bright, radiant smile that catches the other child off guard. The blonde youth sprints away in a panic while the pink-haired girl calls out in surprise. With a flushed face and heavy breathing, the blonde youth continues their frantic escape from the garden gazebo. The pink-haired girl watches the retreat with wide eyes, looking somewhat stunned by the sudden and hasty departure. Stopping to catch their breath, the blonde-haired youth swallows hard while reflecting on the bizarre encounter. The blonde-haired youth walks alone through the sun-drenched garden pathway, moving away from the villa. A purple-haired chibi character hugs a small animal while a message encourages readers to follow the story. Surrounded by knights at the station, the youth prepares to leave, resolving to forget the rose-like girl. The blonde youth reflects that his escape into the world should have been quite easy. A grand narrative box announces that 4 years and 3 months have finally passed. An attendant presents an invitation from the Empress to His Grace at the Grand Estate. Looking at the letter, the man finds the Empress's matchmaking attempts to be incredibly bothersome. The silver-haired man instructs his attendant to prepare his formal attire for the royal banquet. The attendant asks for any further instructions while the Duke remains silent and deep in thought. A close-up highlights the exquisite jewel and intricate patterns on the Duke's formal banquet vest. Framed by white flowers, Llewellyn stares coldly at the letter while holding it firmly. A decorative panel announces that the day of the grand royal banquet has finally arrived. Guests gather under the glowing chandeliers of the palace's massive and opulent ballroom. Elegant couples dance across the floor as floating musical notes fill the festive evening air.
Several noble ladies surround the silver-haired duke as he makes his way through the ballroom.
Llewellyn appears visibly annoyed and uncomfortable with the overwhelming attention from the banquet guests. The heavy ballroom doors swing open with a loud creak, drawing every eye in the room. A black-haired man and a pink-haired woman make their grand and stunning entrance together. The black-haired man stands tall and imposing in a dark uniform and a red cape.
The ballroom guests whisper in shock as they recognize the Tower Master and his companion.
A brief close-up of pink hair and a small mouth reveals a glimpse of beauty. The pink-haired woman wears a detailed blue dress featuring delicate white floral patterns and lace.
Standing radiantly in her floral gown, Rosnia captivates the entire room with her striking presence.
Surrounded by soft pink roses, the woman exudes an aura of grace and quiet elegance.
Llewellyn is completely stunned as he recognizes the woman from his brief childhood encounter years ago.
Rosnia points towards something excitedly while standing beside her dark-haired and protective brother Adrian. With her eyes closed, Rosnia offers a gentle smile while appearing serene and happy. The blonde crown prince greets Lady Rosnia with a polite and formal greeting on the carpet. The prince compares her presence to a walking rose, leaving the woman feeling somewhat confused.
Llewellyn's expression darkens with intense jealousy as he watches the prince interact with the woman.
Taking her hand, the crown prince leads Rosnia into a graceful and elegant ballroom dance.
The prince compliments her beauty while a flustered Rosnia replies that he is too kind. Llewellyn watches the couple dance while his eye reflects their movement and his mind questions why. Narrative bubbles question why she was revealed now after being hidden away for so long.
Staring with simmering rage, Llewellyn curses the crown prince for his intimate behavior toward her.
The silver-haired duke darkly contemplates whether he should just strip the prince of his title.
Llewellyn is startled and turns his head sharply as someone nearby speaks out in surprise.
The duke's cold gaze settles on a man standing nearby in the crowded ballroom.
A silent and intense standoff occurs between the silver-haired Llewellyn and the black-haired Adrian.
Framed by a dark background, the two men exchange a hostile and unwavering stare. Llewellyn identifies the man as Adrian Hill, while Adrian turns away with a disdainful look.
Adrian's face twitches with visible irritation as he feels the duke's persistent and heavy gaze.
Llewellyn finds his connection to Adrian Hill to be deeply unpleasant while watching the dancing couple.
Groups of faceless guests continue to whisper and gossip about the important figures at the banquet.
Consumed by a possessive urge, the duke darkly considers plucking out the eyes of every observer. The crown prince and Rosnia stand together on the red carpet under floating musical notes.
Llewellyn approaches the woman from behind, his tall figure looming as she begins to turn.
The two characters finally share a direct gaze as flower petals drift through the air.
Llewellyn is depicted in a handsome portrait, his features softened by a glow of white flowers.
Staring up at the man, Rosnia's heart beats rapidly as she notes how incredibly handsome he is.
The duke stands close to Rosnia while Adrian watches them from behind with a serious expression.
Guests whisper about the marriageable age of the Archmage and his lovely pink-haired younger sister.
A noble criticizes the Hill family status, while Llewellyn notes that everyone is blinded by power.
The brown-haired assistant notes that the duke appears visibly upset by the mention of the Hill family.
Llewellyn's expression darkens with a menacing aura as he sharply commands his assistant to keep silent. Startled by the sudden outburst, the confused assistant stammers while the silver-haired duke turns away in anger. Consumed by frustration, Llewellyn stomps away while grinding his teeth over the ongoing issues with the Hills.
Llewellyn stands alone, his stoic face masking a deeper internal conflict regarding his next course of action.
An array of luxurious jewelry and fine footwear is displayed as preparations for something grand are underway. The assistant watches with concern as the duke obsessively studies a collection of peculiar and unexpected items. Confused by the duke's behavior, the assistant wonders why his master is now intensely studying dessert recipes. The assistant internally questions if Llewellyn is simply bored with life as he watches him read silently. As May arrives in Rashian, the lush garden landscapes are filled with blooming flowers and quiet beauty.
Llewellyn examines a blank page, reflecting on how a mysterious and uninvited presence has entered his life.
While the pink-haired woman prepares herself, Llewellyn watches the distant garden with a calm and knowing smile. From his high window, the duke gazes down at the vibrant pink roses blooming in the garden below. A close-up focus on the silver-haired man's face reveals a gaze filled with lingering and intense longing. The assistant lets out a shocked gasp, appearing completely baffled by the duke's recent and very unusual demands. Llewellyn expresses his growing irritation that Adrian Hill continues to ignore every single one of his letters. The assistant asks for clarification on who the duke is talking about, and Llewellyn confirms he means Adrian Hill. Llewellyn scratches his head in total frustration, lamenting the impossibility of delivering a letter directly to Rosnia. The assistant asks if His Excellency believes the Archmage is holding his younger sister captive, worrying about the reputation of that insane family of mages. The Duke asks his assistant for a clever idea, but the man humbles himself by claiming he was just a fool.
Llewellyn paces frantically while regretting not kidnapping her sooner, leading his assistant to believe the Duke has finally lost his mind. Skipping the small talk and going straight to abduction is certainly a bold life choice.
Driven by an overwhelming obsession, the silver-haired Duke finally finds a way to reach the woman he seeks. The scene shifts to a busy train station as a narrative box notes a new problem arising. A young child at the station watches the white dog, wondering if it is a wolf before someone clarifies it looks like a retriever. A man and woman walking through the station observe the passing white dog, wondering if it belongs to a powerful mage. A close-up focus on the white dog's green eyes reveals a sharp and very human-like intelligence.
The white dog leaps gracefully over a high iron fence, entering the grounds of a private villa.
Landing silently on the other side, the mysterious animal begins to explore the expansive and sunlit garden estate. The dog stands alert while narrative text explains that Rosnia spends her summer vacations at this villa. As the dog moves through the garden, an internal thought expresses regret for not arriving much sooner. As the white dog wanders through the garden, it internally questions where she is and wonders if she never actually arrived. Peering through the rose bushes, the dog realizes with a sense of disappointment that she is not there.
Llewellyn's face is superimposed over the search, his thoughts plagued by the fear of never meeting her.
The white dog's paws trod softly across the green grass as it continues its silent and persistent search. Sunlight fills Rosnia's bedroom where she lies fast asleep, unaware of the visitor outside her window.
Rosnia blinks her eyes open in a daze, feeling confused about her surroundings as she slowly wakes up.
Sitting up in bed, the pink-haired woman is startled to see the silver-haired Duke standing in her room.
Llewellyn stands before her with his shirt open, offering a calm and confident gaze in the soft morning.
Rosnia tells the man not to come any closer, while the Duke calmly asks why not as she struggles to respond. Llewellyn remains silent, his handsome profile highlighted by the bright sunlight streaming through the large bedroom window.
Llewellyn suggests they should just spend the whole day naked together to get used to each other's bodies, causing Rosnia to scream about him trying to make her die of shame.
Flushed with embarrassment, Rosnia pulls the sheets tight and yells that she definitely wants to stay clothed.
Llewellyn breaks into a broad and cheerful smile, clearly amused by the pink-haired woman's flustered and indignant reaction.
Completely bewildered, a chibi-style Rosnia wonders what on earth the Duke is even talking about at this hour.
Llewellyn suddenly sweeps Rosnia into his arms, causing her to let out a startled and very loud cry.
Llewellyn leans in to plant a soft smooch on Rosnia's cheek while she weakly protests and tells him to wait. A close-up focus on Rosnia's wide eyes captures her shock at the Duke's sudden and bold affection. A thorny branch of pink roses stretches across the frame, serving as a silent witness to the encounter.
Sunlight filters through the lush garden greenery, illuminating a white gazebo nestled among the blooming and fragrant roses.
Framed by roses, Llewellyn holds a smiling Rosnia in his arms as they share a moment of happiness. Llewellyn and Rosnia share a quiet and affectionate moment as the summer sun shines brightly.
Llewellyn offers a soft smile while confirming a point, his green eyes shimmering with intense emotion.
Llewellyn calls Rosnia beautiful, causing the flustered woman to remark on the impact of his looks. Framed by a blooming archway of roses, the two share a romantic embrace in the garden. Amidst the roses, a possessive thought expresses a desire for Rosnia to remain blissfully unaware. Llewellyn and Rosnia share a passionate and deep kiss while surrounded by a sea of flowers.
Llewellyn reflects that Rosnia might run away if she ever discovered his true and dark nature.
The scene transitions to the couple walking together through the meticulously maintained and sunlit garden estate.
Llewellyn asks if the lemon water is satisfactory. Rosnia finds it lovely and wonders about his hobbies.
Rosnia realizes she is seeing a rare side of him before asking about the garden's floral variety. Llewellyn explains the garden reflects Lord Alunia's taste, confirming he is well acquainted with Rosnia's famous mother. Rosnia is stunned to learn he knows her mother, a renowned knight of the Great Empire. Rosnia recounts her mother's history as a magic swordsman following her marriage many years ago. A flashback shows Alunia playing pranks, including the humorous memory of dressing young Adrian as a girl. Reflecting on her childhood, Rosnia misses her mother and wonders if she is still alive somewhere. Llewellyn reveals his master is the biological sibling of Lord Alunia, shocking the pink-haired woman. Completely taken aback, Rosnia begins to piece together the scattered memories and stories her mother told. Standing in the grand garden, Rosnia asks for the specific name of his mysterious and powerful master.
Llewellyn identifies his master as Enrique Robitz, a name that leaves Rosnia visibly shaken and breathless.
Ruellen explains that Enrique is the younger brother of Margrave Roberts, a high-ranking noble of the border. A detailed family crest featuring a sword and shield represents the prestigious and noble Roberts lineage. Narrative text details the rivalry between the loyal Roberts family and the royal-blooded but independent Hills. Rosnia realizes her mother was an illegitimate child of the Roberts family and hid her complex origins. Ruellen remains silent while watching Rosnia process the heavy and unexpected revelations regarding her family's hidden past. Ruellen asks if she is all right. Rosnia confirms she was just lost in thoughts about her mother. Ruellen notes Alunia's 15-year disappearance, while Rosnia mentions her father's ongoing but perhaps futile search. Rosnia begins to walk away, prompting Ruellen to call out her name with a look of concern. Turning back with a radiant smile, Rosnia cheerfully addresses the Duke as flower petals drift around her. Ruellen's face flushes with a deep blush as he is struck by the woman's sudden, joyful expression. A focus on the lemon water accompanies a question about whether his master is a powerful mage. Sitting together, Ruellen explains his master is a sage, possessing the skills of both mage and knight. Rosnia finds the Rashian Duchy's title strange, wondering why they avoid the term magic swordsman. Rosnia reflects on the man's status as the Duke, feeling she had briefly forgotten his high position. Rosnia questions Ruellen's true motives, wondering if his kindness is merely an act against the Hill family. Ruellen listens intently as Rosnia brings up her identity as a member of the rival Hill family. Looking him directly in the eyes, Rosnia asks the Duke plainly if he truly hates her. The air grows still as the question of his potential dislike for her hangs between them. Ruellen lets out a sudden laugh, surprising Rosnia and breaking the heavy tension of the moment. A close-up of Ruellen's smiling face reveals a look of genuine amusement and lingering warmth. Ruellen asks if Rosnia herself doesn't dislike him, leaving the pink-haired woman appearing completely bewildered. Rosnia admits it is a relief, but she immediately freezes as she realizes the weight of her words. Rosnia internally panics over her reaction, questioning why his feelings should even matter given their eventual parting. Despite her logic, Rosnia struggles with the realization that she truly does not want to leave him. Rosnia resolves to be realistic and pushes aside her blossoming feelings to maintain her focus. Ruellen offers a dazzling and handsome smile that radiates through the garden's lush and colorful greenery. A chibi-style Rosnia is completely overwhelmed by his looks, squealing internally about how incredibly handsome he is. Ruellen leans in and captures Rosnia in a sudden kiss, catching the startled woman completely off guard. Rosnia weakly protests the sudden intimacy, while Ruellen continues the bold and very affectionate encounter. Rosnia panics that she is entering a villainous route that never existed in the original story's timeline. Chibi Rosnia frantically shakes her head to dispel her crazy thoughts while a confused Ruellen watches. Chibi Ruellen invites Rosnia to go somewhere, but the confused woman asks for a destination. Ruellen admits his predicament after their kiss, offering a charming and slightly mischievous smile. Rosnia stares blankly at the Duke, her mind clearly racing to process his bold statement. Ruellen laughs at Rosnia's frozen expression as she processes the weight of their intimate moment. Rosnia credits her vigor to her youth, but Ruellen insists age isn't the real issue. Ruellen offers a warm smile while declaring that Rosnia is simply far too irresistible. Amidst the blooming roses, Ruellen promises to handle everything if Rosnia simply stays by him. A massive ship battles turbulent waves under a sky filled with lightning and pouring rain. Standing at a window, Adrian watches the storm with a look of intense and brooding focus. Narrative boxes describe a sea beast's lair and the potential danger Ruellen poses to Rosnia. Adrian's resolve hardens as he refuses to accept Ruellen's interference in his sister's life. Elegant portraits highlight the ancient and unspoken rivalry between the Rarciel and Hill families. A hand slams down on a map, signaling a decisive and very urgent shift in plans. Adrian vows to defeat the sea beast and prevent anyone from coveting his sister Rosnia. The storm rages as narrative text emphasizes the lethal risks of pursuing the Tower Master's sister. Sunlight bathes the grand villa as birds fly over the peaceful and beautifully manicured gardens. Soft light filters into the bedroom, illuminating the rumpled white sheets of the large bed. Rosnia wakes with a sharp gasp, her eyes wide as she suddenly remembers the previous night. Rosnia rubs her eyes, noting the early hour and reflecting on the events of the evening. Finding Ruellen still asleep, Rosnia celebrates her small victory of waking up before the Duke. Memories of their intimacy flood Rosnia's mind, leaving the pink-haired woman deeply flustered and embarrassed. Slipping quietly from the bed, Rosnia prepares to leave the sleeping Duke behind in the room. Rosnia walks through the lush estate garden, her mind occupied by thoughts of the coming day. Rosnia considers visiting the coastal cliffs with Ruellen today, her face showing a gentle smile. Suddenly stopping in her tracks, Rosnia senses a presence and feels a chill of apprehension. Rosnia scolds herself for having carefree thoughts when her brother Adrian could appear at any moment. The pink-haired woman continues her walk, deciding it is time to start preparing some breakfast. Rosnia wonders what she should cook, deciding that something quick and easy would be the best.
From the shadows of the rose bushes, a blonde man observes Rosnia with a cold gaze.
Sensing the heavy stare, Rosnia flinches and turns toward the roses with a look of alarm. The blonde man steps out, greeting Rosnia Hill by name as the wind ruffles his hair. Framed by flowers, the intruder notes that finding her alone makes his current task quite simple. Approaching her, the man questions if she is truly the weak point of the Tower Master. Rosnia's expression sours as she demands to know who gave the man such ridiculous information. The blonde man finds it obvious that she is the treasure the Tower Master values most. Rosnia internally rejects the idea that her brother's affection makes her a vulnerability for him. Deciding to defend herself, Rosnia prepares to teach the trespasser a lesson for entering family grounds. The blonde man remains unfazed while Rosnia's anger flares, creating a visible and very dark aura.
A thought bubble expresses Rosnia's indignation at the man's continued and very bold insults.
Rosnia unleashes a surge of magical energy, her hand glowing as she attempts to strike back. The blonde man catches her wrist with ease, instantly neutralizing the magic she tried to use. Stunned, Rosnia realizes her magic has vanished and wonders how such a thing is even possible. Leaning in close, the intruder mocks her, declaring that her magic has no effect on him. The man explains his rare condition of magic immunity while holding Rosnia's arm in a firm grip. Rosnia stares at the man in silence, her mind searching for any way to escape him. A flashback reveals that 3 years ago, Adrian and Rosnia investigated reports of illegal human experiments. Adrian leads a team toward a cave entrance as they close in on the experiment site. Inside the dark cave, Adrian and Rosnia discover the horrifying extent of the wizard's cruel activities. The investigators find numerous subjects locked in small iron cages, their conditions appearing truly desperate. A narrative box confirms that among the captives was a child with a rare magic immunity. The blonde-haired man reflects on his sinister belief that a specific child should have died. Rosnia trembles as she questions the intruder's identity while he declares his hatred for her brother. The blonde man commands Rosnia to be captured before departing, having confirmed she is indeed present. A close-up focus on a hand reveals a glowing blue magic tool radiating a powerful light. The blonde man stands within a circle of magic energy while Rosnia watches with a stunned expression. Rosnia questions why a man who claims to hate wizards would use such advanced magic tools. Framed by a dark aura, Rosnia's mind races as she wonders who exactly intends to capture her. Standing amidst swirling red energy, Rosnia wonders if Ruwelin Rassian is the one planning to seize her. Intense purple and silver energy pulses across the scene, signaling a powerful shift in the atmosphere. Rosnia stands alone in the center of the grand villa hallway, her figure illuminated by bright light. Ruwelin enters the room with extreme urgency, asking if Rosnia walked and noting his worry over her. The two share a tense look while the silver-haired duke appears visibly relieved to see her. Rosnia offers a radiant and gentle smile while explaining she was just about to prepare some breakfast. Ruwelin watches her intently, suspecting something happened but knowing she will likely not reveal the truth. Offering a kind smile, Ruwelin tells Rosnia he will handle breakfast and encourages her to rest. Rosnia protests that the duke always cooks, insisting she should be the one to prepare the meal. The scene transitions as the couple walks together toward the kitchen to begin their morning routine together. Wisps of dark energy swirl as an internal thought reflects on needing more time to achieve goals. Ruwelin watches Rosnia with a brooding look, resolving to win her heart to ensure his own survival. Haunted by possessive thoughts, the silver-haired duke considers death preferable to seeing Rosnia with another person. Ruwelin reflects on his fear of death and the possibility of Rosnia forgetting him after he dies. Rosnia works diligently in the kitchen while a dark thought resolves to wait for a better opportunity. Ruwelin's hand reaches toward Rosnia as he reflects on his determination not to ruin their current relationship. Sensing a presence behind her, Rosnia turns around with a look of mild surprise and deep curiosity. Ruwelin steps closer and offers to help with the cooking, suggesting working together will be much faster. Standing at the counter with various ingredients, Rosnia agrees and mentions her plan to make some steel. Framed by white roses, Ruwelin's expression is stoic as a heavy question regarding his fate is posed. Rosnia is depicted in a lovely portrait, surrounded by a border of blooming and vibrant blue roses. A quiet and peaceful night sky is filled with glittering stars and soft, dark passing clouds. Ruwelin lies in bed gasping and sweating in the night as Rosnia quietly enters the bedroom. A close-up focus on Ruwelin's flushed face captures his labored breathing and his current feverish state. Standing over the bed, Rosnia addresses the duke while internally noting she anticipated this turn of events. Ruwelin opens his eyes and gazes at her, weakly questioning if he has died and entered heaven. The Duke reaches out and takes her hand, calling her name twice with a voice of vulnerability. Rosnia cups the man's face in her hands, asking with deep concern why he is currently crying. Their faces are shown in split panels as they share a moment of intense and emotional connection.
Llewellyn pulls her close and asks why she avoids him, appearing deeply hurt by her distant behavior.
A transitional break encourages the reader to continue the journey through the ongoing and dramatic narrative path. A curated collection of tales is presented, bridging the gap between the current and future story scenes. A formal transition page provides information about the series' overall production and its specific narrative credits. Llewellyn remains in bed, pleading with Rosnia while reminding her of her promise to help him.
Rosnia realizes his beauty makes her weak as the Duke begs for help and they share an embrace.
A close-up captures a tender moment as Llewellyn's hand gently and softly touches Rosnia's blushing cheek. The two characters move closer together, their lips just inches apart as the romantic tension peaks.
Llewellyn and Rosnia share an intimate and very soft kiss in the dimly lit bedroom.
A narrative box reveals Rosnia's inner realization about the growing and undeniable feeling she has for Llewellyn. The bedroom remains silent as an internal thought questions whether Llewellyn is truly in his right mind.
Staring at the man, Rosnia wonders if he might be feigning his vulnerability to deceive and capture her.
A cluster of delicate pink roses blooms brightly, serving as a symbolic witness to the unfolding nighttime romance.
A grand chandelier hangs from the ceiling, casting a soft and ethereal glow over the silent villa.
Duke Llewellyn sits up in bed as Rosnia lies beside him in the dim light. Close-ups focus on their expressive eyes, capturing the heavy emotional tension and shared sorrow between them.
Llewellyn hovers over her with a look of desperation while she wonders what she should do.
Tears stream down Rosnia's face as she admits her profound confusion and questions why this is happening. Internal text questions why he suddenly appeared to turn her entire world completely upside down. Llewellyn reaches out to her, his voice trembling as he asks if he has somehow hurt her.
Llewellyn begs her not to cry and pleads for her to tell him if something is wrong. Rosnia stares blankly with tears in her eyes, internally questioning her true feelings for the silver-haired man. A close-up of Llewellyn's face accompanies her thought that he is the first person to affect her.
Rosnia recalls their past intimacy, reflecting on how special it felt and how she wanted more. Rosnia blushes deeply while thinking about how she truly did not want to part with him. A single tear rolls down the pink-haired woman's cheek as she keeps her eyes tightly shut. Llewellyn sits up and apologizes profusely, insisting that everything is his fault regardless of the situation.
Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a tight, desperate embrace, seeking comfort in her presence amidst the bedroom's shadows.
Llewellyn buries his face in her shoulder, his shirtless form highlighting his vulnerability and deep-seated emotional pain.
Rosnia stares into the distance over his shoulder, her eyes wide with unshed tears and lingering doubt.
Narrative text explains her internal conflict between remaining a hostage or betraying the Duke to escape.
Llewellyn calls her name with concern as she pushes him away and begins to sit up.
Rosnia resolves not to be caught easily and asks the Duke if he approached her on purpose. Llewellyn looks completely bewildered by her sudden accusation, his expression one of shock and utter confusion.
Rosnia questions if his collapse was a calculated act prompted by her brother Adrian's past actions. Rosnia laments being used after trying to do a good deed, struggling to understand her own feelings.
Llewellyn remains silent, his expression unreadable as he absorbs the weight of the pink-haired woman's sharp accusations.
The silver-haired Duke looks down with a somber and pained expression, seemingly wounded by her harsh words.
Rosnia notes his reaction, concluding that his behavior was never sincere and merely part of an elaborate act. Rosnia looks at the Duke with a mix of suspicion and hurt, her anger masking her disappointment. Llewellyn attempts to speak, his voice trailing off as he struggles to find the right words. A view of the garden estate accompanies the realization that his memory loss was also a lie. Rosnia trembles while staring at him, her silence speaking volumes of the betrayal she feels in this moment.
Llewellyn calls out to her urgently, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperate longing.
Llewellyn cups her face and insists he never used her, asking how he could ever do such things. Rosnia points out his status as a duke, arguing that acting like her lover made no sense. Rosnia reflects on their family's enmity, convinced he couldn't have genuine feelings for his enemy's daughter. Llewellyn stares at her with intense emotion, vehemently declaring that his affection was never an act.
Rosnia turns away and demands that he tell her the whole truth honestly to clear the air.
Looking back at him, Rosnia asks plainly why he was always so kind to her despite their history. Llewellyn remains motionless as a bright and shimmering aura begins to emanate from his broad chest.
Rosnia reveals she cast a truth-seeking spell to see through any lies he might try to tell.
Rosnia feels a pang of disappointment, wondering if he will still choose to keep his secrets hidden. Breaking the heavy silence, Ruellen resolves to tell her everything, his gaze fixed firmly on her face. Ruellen offers a solemn and steady look, preparing to unveil the hidden truths of his mysterious past. Rosnia watches him intently, her eyes reflecting her hope for honesty despite the dark revelations she expects. Taking her hands, Ruellen asks for a promise that she will not grow to hate him afterward.
A summary of various artistic works is presented, detailing different narrative paths for the reader to explore.
Ruellen holds Rosnia close as she gazes up at him, the tension between them remaining palpably high. Rosnia wonders if his secret is truly terrible, but decides to listen before making any final judgments.
Ruellen begins his explanation by recounting the events of the very first time they ever cross paths. A close-up focus on a vibrant green eye captures the intensity of a childhood memory resurfacing. Rosnia looks at him with realization, noting that the details he provided confirm the truth of his story. Sunlight illuminates a garden fountain, while Rosnia recalls her age being around 11 or 12 during that time. Mussels and daisies set a tender, romantic tone for the unfolding scene. Rosnia is stunned as she questions if he has been in love with her for 8 years. Ruellen sits shirtless on the bed while Rosnia stands before him, both looking deeply solemn. Rosnia's face flushes a deep red as she processes the weight of his confession. As Ruellen touches her waist, Rosnia notes they have only met twice in their lives. Turning his back to her, Ruellen acknowledges that they have barely ever spoken to one another. Ruellen admits his actions seem insane, standing shirtless with his back turned to the woman. A sense of unease washes over Rosnia as she questions the nature of the situation. Ruellen pulls her close, explaining that he has harbored these intense feelings for a long time. Ruellen confesses he came to the villa as a last chance, leaving Rosnia completely shocked. A vertical line transition marks a shift in the heavy atmosphere of the bedroom conversation.
A flashback shows Rosnia finding Ruellen lying face down in the rain with a wolf nearby.
Standing under a lace umbrella, young Rosnia looks down at the collapsed boy in the rain. The silver-haired boy looks up weakly from the ground, his face pale and drenched. A narrative box reflects on the dire consequences if she had not found him. Rosnia is horrified to realize that he truly might have died if she hadn't intervened.
Through the window, the couple debates his sanity as he offers a mysterious and vague response.
Ruellen embraces her and asks what her truth-seeking magic revealed about his heartfelt and honest confession. Ruellen asks if his words were proven true, while Rosnia realizes he saw through her spell. Ruellen reveals he risked his life to see her, leaving Rosnia stunned by his intense dedication.
Dark energy swirls as a question remains about whether she can accept his nature.
Shadowy hands loom over Rosnia as Ruellen asks if she views him as an obsessed lunatic. Vibrant purple roses bloom, symbolizing the complex and potentially dangerous romance unfolding. Embracing her tightly, the Duke declares that he has finally told her the truth. Rosnia summarizes that his love was one-sided for years while recalling her previous perception of him. A Chibi Reaper appears as Rosnia reflects on viewing him only as her eventual future killer. Chibi Ruellen blushes while Rosnia realizes his heart belongs to her rather than the story's heroine. Ruellen leans toward her with a gentle gaze, their proximity creating a soft and intimate atmosphere. The silver-haired man offers a soft smile, his eyes reflecting a deep, long-held affection. Delicate white flowers frame the scene, accentuating the romantic tension building within the villa. Chibi Rosnia panics, realizing the man she fell for is a total and very obsessive maniac. Speech bubbles over the villa confirm Ruellen came only to meet her, not to use her. Ruellen stands shirtless and vulnerable, his hand over his heart as he gazes. Rosnia holds up a hand to stop him, her expression shifting to one of serious concern. Rosnia recounts meeting a magic-immune boy at dawn who claimed she was her brother Adrian's weakness. Ruellen identifies the boy as his subordinate Alex, but denies sending him to confront the woman. Rosnia is outraged to confirm the intruder's affiliation while Ruellen pleads with her to avoid misunderstanding. Rosnia reveals she confirmed his honesty and released the spell, questioning if Alex misunderstood his master's intentions. Flashback panels show Alex sneezing while Ruellen confirms the boy was indeed mistaken about his mission. While Alex sneezes at the campsite, narrative text reveals Ruellen's singular goal from the very beginning. Ruellen's handsome face is shown in close-up as he prepares to reveal his motivation. A simple text box declares his ultimate and very determined desire to win her heart. Surrounded by roses, Rosnia blushes deeply, affected by the weight of his sincere declaration. The couple stands close together in the dim light, the tension reaching its peak. Ruellen reaches out and gently touches her cheek, his expression one of pure devotion. Rosnia tries to focus on their future plans and Adrian's return, but Ruellen remains focused on her. In a soft close-up, Ruellen speaks her name with a voice full of emotion. Rosnia gazes up at him with wide eyes as the romantic atmosphere becomes undeniable.
Llewellyn pulls her into a sudden and passionate kiss, capturing the pink-haired woman in his embrace. A final transition page presents production credits and details regarding the ongoing series. Rosnia asks what is happening, flustered as she questions the reason for the sudden kiss. Llewellyn remains silent while holding her, his expression unreadable as she stares back in shock. Rosnia refuses to answer why she was crying, while Llewellyn asks if she prefers another kiss. Llewellyn firmly grips Rosnia's arms as they stand close together in the brightly lit room. The silver-haired man looks down with a somber expression, his brow furrowed in quiet contemplation. Rosnia accuses him of being suspiciously nice, fearing he is only being kind to manipulate her.
Llewellyn claims he must be kind because she is the only person he truly wants.
Rosnia gazes up at him in disbelief, questioning if he truly loves her as he suggests.
Llewellyn offers a gentle and sincere smile, framed by delicate white flowers in the background.
Llewellyn admits love is inadequate but uses it anyway, while Rosnia finds his logic utterly nonsensical. Llewellyn asks if she hates him, but Rosnia struggles to find the words to respond.
Internal monologues reveal Llewellyn's resolve to accept her hatred if it means keeping her by him. Llewellyn gazes at her with intense desperation, declaring that he cannot let her go anymore. A close-up focus captures the Duke's hand tightening its grip on the pink-haired woman's dress. Llewellyn kisses her, stating that her brother's arrival will not change the current situation at all. As their lips meet, Rosnia begins to question the true meaning behind the Duke's bold statement. Rosnia closes her eyes tightly, a single bead of sweat rolling down her flushed and flustered face. The grand villa stands silent under a vast, dark sky as a new day slowly begins. Rosnia sleeps peacefully while the black wolf sits nearby, keeping a watchful eye on her. The wolf growls softly as Rosnia sits up in bed, sensing an immediate change in the atmosphere. The wolf whines as Rosnia realizes something significant is happening, her expression shifting to one of alarm. Rosnia looks out toward the bright morning light, her long pink hair cascading down her back. A close-up of Rosnia's eye accompanies the sight of ships arriving, sparking a feeling of frustration.
A large wooden ship is moored at the stone dock as waves lap against the shore. A narrative bubble confirms the arrival of Adrian, signaling a major turning point in the story.
Adrian stands on the ship's deck, his dark hair ruffled by the wind as he looks ahead. Shimmering purple flowers glow with an ethereal light, creating a mystical and calm transitional scene. Rosnia frantically calls for the Duke to wake up while he groans in his sleepy state.
Rosnia panics as Rulin wakes, questioning what is wrong while she struggles to explain the situation.
Rosnia places her hands on the Duke's bare chest, her expression filled with urgency and fear.
Llewellyn instructs Rosnia to simply follow his lead and go along with whatever he says next.
Llewellyn claims they were only together for her treatment, his expression stoic and very composed. Llewellyn suggests running away, leading Rosnia to consider escaping her brother's suffocating and obsessive overprotection.
Rosnia wonders if she is simply trading one obsessive madman for another in her quest for freedom.
Sensing her brother's arrival, Rosnia realizes that Adrian is finally here at the villa estate. Rosnia urges the Duke to hide immediately, questioning why he remains standing still despite the danger. Llewellyn speaks her name softly, his expression filled with a calm and very steady resolve.
Llewellyn touches her face and calls her a handful, his gaze reflecting a mix of affection.
The two share a tender and lingering kiss, the world around them seemingly fading away. Llewellyn promises to create a distraction so she can slip away and remain hidden from Adrian. Llewellyn commands her to stay hidden until he gives the signal to move from her spot. The silver-haired man blushes deeply, his face framed by vibrant blue roses as he looks away.
Rosnia decides to postpone her decision about joining him, sighing as she remains behind the door.
A sliver of light illuminates Rosnia's face as she peers through a crack in the bare. Llewellyn's eye is visible through the narrow opening as he watches for any sign of movement. Adrian stands outside with the black wolf, petting the animal as he approaches the main gate. Rosnia stands poised among white flowers, her elegant blue dress highlighting her beauty and grace. Adrian arrives at the gate, greeted by Rosnia as he stands with a stern, cold expression.
Adrian offers a mysterious smile, while his eyes remain sharp and focused on the woman.
Rosnia smiles while internally panicking at Adrian's arrival, wondering if this ordeal will ever truly end. The black-haired man offers a cold and formal greeting, addressing the Duke as a brother. Turning his attention toward the pink-haired woman, the black-haired man calls out to his sister. Adrian smiles down at Rosnia, who worries whether she will survive this confrontation safely. Rosnia laughs nervously while Adrian stares at her with an intense and unwavering gaze. Responding to the pressure, Rosnia resolves to go for it since she has nothing left to lose. Adrian's expression shifts to one of surprise as he reacts to the woman's unexpected behavior. Adrian asks if she ate something strange or if the heat finally got to her head.
Chibi Rosnia cries out in pain, calling her brother a jerk for his rough behavior.
Rosnia asks if he messed something up since he is acting suspiciously nice without reason.
Adrian questions her heavy dress, while Rosnia fears he will discover the truth about her situation. Adrian's gaze narrows suspiciously as he observes his sister's increasingly nervous and strange behavior. Adrian offers to cook something good for Rosnia since she looks like she has struggled. Adrian tells his sister to do whatever she wants as he sits back on the sofa.
A flashback depicts the intense connection between Llewellyn and Rosnia, framed by the brother's gaze.
Rosnia reflects on her loneliness and how much she hated eating by herself while waiting.
Rosnia admits she kept waiting for her brother, who looks away with a somber expression. Rosnia asks what he wants to eat while Adrian remains silent and seemingly deep in thought.
Rosnia panics internally, wondering if she went too far after feeling forced to say something.
Adrian delivers a playful blow to Rosnia's head, causing her to cry out in protest. Rosnia offers a strained smile and tells her brother to rest while she prepares food.
Adrian's expression darkens as he stares intensely, his red eyes reflecting a growing sense of suspicion.
Rosnia chops carrots in the kitchen, relieved that she seemingly managed to escape his interrogation.
A sudden, loud crashing sound echoes through the villa, causing Rosnia to stop her cooking.
Startled by the noise, Rosnia looks toward the source of the sound with wide, terrified eyes.
Adrian demands to know why the man from Racian is on his property, while Llewellyn retorts. Llewellyn provocatively refers to himself as Rosnia's dog, his expression shifting into a smug smile. Rosnia is horrified, realizing both men are lunatics while she remains the only sane person there.
Panicking, Rosnia runs through the villa toward the garden, shouting Llewellyn's name in desperate concern.
Rosnia reaches the garden and finds a scene of destruction, her eyes searching for the men. Finding the garden trashed and the atmosphere heavy, Rosnia notes how strange the situation has become. Adrian stands over the kneeling silver-haired Duke, prepared to strike him down with his cane.
Adrian asks what nonsense Llewellyn is speaking, while the Duke repeats he is Rosnia's dog.
Llewellyn claims he spoke her name affectionately, leaving Rosnia shocked and confused by his bold declaration.
Rosnia wonders why Llewellyn would make such a scandalous claim right in front of her brother.
Adrian's face is obscured by shadows as he grips his cane, his anger reaching a boiling point. Adrian demands to know what Llewellyn did to his sister as his cane begins to glow. Rosnia throws herself in front of the Duke, pleading with her brother to stop his violent attack. Adrian realizes something significant occurred while he was away, his frustration mounting as he watches them.
Rosnia laments her second life, frustrated that she is older than her brother, yet still controlled. Rosnia shouts that she is tired of his overprotection and insists she is no longer a child.
Adrian argues that she nearly died 37 times, a claim that leaves Rosnia completely baffled.
Adrian recounts her childhood accidents, including falling off a cliff and nearly drowning in a lake.
Adrian reminds her of a recent beast attack, his expression becoming increasingly grim and very serious.
Adrian asks how he could not be overprotective when danger has always remained right beside her.
Llewellyn stands beside Rosnia as she fears Adrian's wrath will surely lead to her demise.
Adrian demands an explanation for Llewellyn's presence, while Rosnia tries to calm her brother's anger.
Rosnia explains she helped the collapsed Duke, but Adrian vows to torture the truth from him.
Blue magical energy surges from Adrian's cane as he prepares to strike the silver-haired Duke.
Rosnia screams for her brother to wait, her expression one of pure terror as magic erupts. Adrian commands Rosnia to stay out of it while he binds Llewellyn in glowing magical chains. Rosnia shouts that she is turning 21 and is tired of her brothers smothering her and ignoring her words.
Chibi Rosnia cries because she remembers nothing, while narrative text notes her brother's extreme sister complex.
Adrian notes that despite being careful, there is always a blind spot as he stares at the bound Duke.
The sound of footsteps approaches as someone off-screen questions what they are seeing in the courtyard. Rosnia and Adrian are startled as the magical chains binding Llewellyn suddenly shatter and fall away.
A blonde-haired man in a dark military uniform appears and formally addresses the silver-haired Duke.
The blonde-haired man stands in the garden with his hand behind his neck, looking very casual.
Rosnia and Adrian watch from a distance as the blonde-haired man approaches the Duke in the garden. Rosnia suspects the blonde man was lurking in disguise while the newcomer asks the Duke why he is tied up. Llewellyn looks back at the newcomer with a neutral expression as the remnants of the magic chains fade. A series credit page features various artist details and promotional text for the ongoing Manhwa series. A large speech bubble against a dark and magical background questions what the Duke is doing. The grand villa stands tall and silent as the afternoon sun illuminates its white stone facade. The four characters stand in the courtyard preparing for a confrontation as the tension continues to rise. Adrian asks if the blonde man spoke to Rosnia, while Alex asks if Llewellyn loves the mage's daughter. Rosnia realizes the blonde man is one of Ruelin's vassals and they appear as close as brothers. Adrian summons a massive swirl of magical energy as he prepares to strike with his walking cane. Rosnia looks on with wide eyes and realizes that her brother is using powerful binding magic. Rosnia screams that magic will not work on the blonde man who stands confidently amidst the energy. Alex offers a faint smile, while Adrian stares back at him with an increasingly focused and stern expression. Rosnia warns Adrian that magic is useless while recalling a test subject they rescued 3 years ago. Adrian remains silent as he processes the information regarding the man's immunity to his magical attacks. Narrative text against a background of leaves questions if all the test subjects died back then. Alex spreads his arms wide and taunts the black-haired man with a confident and mocking posture. The blonde man asks the Mage Tower Master what he plans to do next in this confrontation. Rosnia notes the blonde man's smart-ass attitude and worries his behavior will lead to his certain death. Adrian reaches for the handle of his cane and prepares to reveal the hidden weapon within. A close-up shows a sharp blade being unsheathed from the black-haired man's dark walking cane. Adrian reveals a long sword hidden in his cane while the blonde man reacts with total shock. A foot kicks off the pavement as Adrian lunges forward with incredible speed and murderous intent. Adrian attacks with high speed, causing Alex to frantically draw his own weapon to block the strike. Alex struggles to block the attack, while Rosnia realizes her brother is an excellent swordsman as well. Rosnia watches the fight in terror, convinced that the blonde man is definitely going to be killed. Ruelin suddenly pulls Rosnia into a protective embrace as the violence in the courtyard intensifies. Rosnia is startled by the sudden contact, while Ruelin calmly asks why she is so shocked. Ruelin questions why her brother is so obsessed with her and argues that his behavior is excessive. Rosnia reflects on how her brother's obsession has been extreme and stifling since they were young children. Alex is sent flying backward as he is unable to withstand the force of Adrian's powerful physical strike. Adrian notes that Alex is lasting a while but declares it is impossible for the man to win. Alex is outraged and questions how a mage can be so proficient in the art of swordsmanship. Adrian stands over the fallen blonde man with his sword ready to deliver a final and decisive blow. Rosnia pleads with Ruelin to stop the fight before something truly terrible happens in the courtyard. Adrian's expression remains cold and unwavering as he focuses entirely on finishing off his opponent. Rosnia is surprised as she notices the sound of more footsteps approaching the scene of the battle. Several more knights in dark uniforms arrive as reinforcements and surround the black-haired man.
Adrian looks back at the new arrivals with a calm expression as he remains ready to fight.
Rosnia wonders when the new men arrived, while Ruelin stands silently behind her in the garden. Rosnia thinks that even with 3 opponents, it will be difficult for them to defeat her brother. Adrian stares with glowing red eyes and a dark expression as he prepares to face the reinforcements. Rosnia decides it would be better to get Ruelin away to safety rather than wait for the end. Ruelin asks the pink-haired woman what will happen between them once her brother finally leaves. Rosnia internally rejects the current situation, expressing that she does not want things to continue this way. Rosnia maintains a formal and distant tone, addressing the silver-haired duke by his noble title. Blushing amidst vibrant flowers, Ruelin proposes that they solve their problems by running away together. Ruelin promises to find a way to stop Adrian even if he attempts to start a war. The Duke assumes Rosnia shares his desire to never be apart for even a single moment. A close-up shows the Duke gently touching the pink-haired woman's face with intense affection. The silver-haired man pulls the woman close, seeking confirmation of her mutual feelings for him. A massive impact shakes the villa as magical energy ripples through the morning air. The blonde-haired vassal and another knight lie defeated on the ground after a swift attack. Blue magical energy surges from the black-haired man's cane as he stands ready to strike. Adrian demands that the Duke return his sister immediately, his expression cold and full of warning. Rosnia is startled as the silver-haired Duke steps forward to protect her from Adrian's wrath. Adrian repeats his command with growing magical intensity, refusing to let his sister remain with Ruelin. Adrian's red eyes glow with intense fury as he stares through a frame of roses. Rosnia apologizes to her brother while declaring her intent to force him to finally calm down. Rosnia explains she must act to prevent a family war while offering to take all resentment. Adrian remains silent and cold, his stoic expression reflecting his refusal to accept her words. Rosnia expresses her sorrow once more, willing to accept the blame for the entire situation. The two siblings stand face to face amidst blue roses during their heated confrontation. The black-haired man's expression remains unyielding as he listens to his sister's desperate plea. Rosnia views her defiance as a necessary form of shock therapy to snap Adrian out of it. Adrian lets out a long, weary sigh as he processes his sister's increasingly rebellious behavior. Adrian questions who she thinks raised her, reminding her of their long and shared history together. Rosnia looks up at her brother with an expression of hurt and deep-seated frustration.
Ruellen speaks her name as Rosnia urgently pleads with him to hurry and escape the villa. Adrian stands silent and stoic while he watches his sister interact with the silver-haired Duke. Rosnia insists that her decision to leave is a serious one and not made on a whim.
Rosnia questions if his protection has become a cage that robs her of any real freedom. Rosnia begins to recount her history, admitting she has always felt lonely and deeply suffocated.
Narrative text highlights Rosnia's long-term internal struggle with her brother's overbearing and restrictive nature. A flashback shows Adrian restricting young Rosnia's social life under the guise of keeping her safe.
Young Rosnia objects to her brother's behavior after other children run away from them in fear. Rosnia insists the other children were good, but Adrian remains unmoved in his suspicious outlook. Adrian warns young Rosnia away from dangerous chemicals, repeating that her safety is his priority. Adrian tells the young girl that she does not need to handle hazardous materials herself. Adrian offers to play with his sister in the garden if she feels bored or lonely.
Young Rosnia looks dejected while her brother's hand rests on her shoulder in a flashback.
Pink hair flows through the air as the scene transitions back to the present conflict.
Rosnia declares she is no longer a child and can heal herself even if she gets hurt.
Rosnia expresses a fierce desire to finally step out and experience the world on her own. Rosnia begs her brother to let her do what she wants just this one time.
Ruellen looks down at the fallen knights as the tension in the courtyard continues building.
Adrian stares back with a grim and unwavering expression as the confrontation reaches its peak. Adrian sighs again, appearing exhausted by the task of managing his sister's newfound independence.
Adrian coldly decrees they will talk at home and her punishment will be 10 years of confinement.
Adrian threatens force while Rosnia laments his refusal to take her words as anything but rebellion.
Rosnia looks on in shock as the magical energy around them begins to fluctuate wildly.
Ruellen offers a gentle smile, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the chaotic magical surroundings.
The three characters stand in the courtyard as Adrian prepares to take his sister back.
Adrian confronts Ruellen with a threat, while the Duke dismisses the possibility of his own death. Adrian faces the silver-haired Duke and his sister, their confrontation reaching a tense stalemate.
Ruellen questions whether the black-haired mage has noticed the changing situation yet.
Rosnia panics as she realizes her attempts to mediate between the two men have completely failed. Desperate to avoid a catastrophic ending, Rosnia resolves to escape the courtyard immediately.
Rosnia begs the silver-haired knight for an escape plan to get Ruellen away safely. The knight explains the teleportation plan, intending to link everyone with a binding spell for transport.
A voice questions what kind of scheme is being hatched during the chaotic confrontation.
Adrian silences Alex as Rosnia urges the knight to hurry before they run out of time. The silver-haired vassal reflects on the irony of receiving help from a member of the Hill family. Rosnia dashes across the courtyard toward the Duke as the scene shifts rapidly. Rosnia clings to the silver-haired man while Adrian watches them with a dark and intense gaze.
Rosnia apologizes to her brother, choosing freedom and Ruellen over returning to the Mage Tower. The pink-haired woman embraces the Duke as magical energy prepares to whisk them away. Ruellen blushes as he looks down at the woman who has chosen to stay by his side.
Adrian utters a single word of warning as he watches his sister prepare to vanish. Rosnia admits her previous claims of hatred were false, but acknowledges the pain he cost her.
Adrian stands alone in the garden with his sword drawn as the magical chains shatter. Rosnia expresses her deep-seated exhaustion from the isolation she endured under her brother's care.
A glowing magic circle forms beneath Rosnia's feet, signaling the activation of the teleportation item. Rosnia offers a gentle smile as she declares her resolve to finally see the world herself.
Adrian remains in the empty courtyard, surrounded by broken magic and the memory of his sister. A series credit page features various artist details and promotional text for the ongoing Manhwa series. A narrative bubble notes that everything in the Grand Palace is proceeding as smooth as silk. Rosnia realizes her hair color perfectly matches the roses the Duke planted throughout his garden.
Maids enthusiastically prepare Rosnia, who looks overwhelmed by the sudden and lavish attention.
Rosnia's internal monologue expresses total confusion at the sudden shift in her environment.
Rosnia realizes the staff are offering a genuine welcome instead of the hostility she expected.
The pink-haired woman looks around the opulent room, stunned by the warmth of her reception. Narrative text points out that the garden is full of roses rather than the original lilacs. A flashback depicts the original heroine Sierra, who is known for her love of lilac flowers. Rosnia recalls how the original story featured Ruellen planting lilacs for a different woman. Text confirms Rosnia escaped her brother's rage and safely arrived at the Lassian Duchy estate.
Ruellen makes a bold declaration, his intense expression catching everyone in the room by surprise.
An elderly official looks completely blindsided, asking the Duke to repeat his shocking statement. Rosnia is horrified by what she just heard, her face reflecting her disbelief and shock. Llewellyn discusses the necessity of an engagement and a formal proposal while his vassals sigh. Rosnia asks the silver-haired duke if he is truly serious about his sudden marriage proposal. Llewellyn questions if the woman has no intention of marrying him after everything they shared. The duke pulls the pink-haired woman closer, the air around them shimmering with magical light. Llewellyn smiles warmly while Rosnia wonders why his expression has suddenly become so gentle. Llewellyn stands close to the woman, his presence looming as he begins to address her. Llewellyn acknowledges the depth of his own obsession, his gaze fixed intensely on Rosnia. Chibi Rosnia panics, noting a familiar crazed look returning to the silver-haired duke's eyes. A narrative bubble questions whether the couple's relationship is progressing at an alarmingly fast pace. Rosnia laments her own weakness for being so easily swayed by the duke's handsome appearance. Rosnia lets out a cry of surprise as Llewellyn suddenly appears right behind her. The silver-haired man offers a simple confirmation as he continues to interact with the maids. Llewellyn gently handles a lock of her pink hair while preparing to make another announcement. Llewellyn reveals that he has invited her father and Adrian to the estate this coming Friday. Rosnia appears calm and elegant as she stands within the grand halls of the duchy. The pink-haired woman's face pales in total shock as she asks for clarification regarding his statement. Llewellyn formally proposes a union to strengthen the bond between the Lausiane and Hill noble families. Internal narrative text describes the sudden and overwhelming impact of the duke's unexpected marriage proposal. Chibi Rosnia screams in frustration, protesting the absurdity of making such a life-altering decision so suddenly. Rosnia ponders her next move, acknowledging the duke's sincerity while still feeling deeply conflicted and uncertain. The pink-haired woman walks through the sunny garden while the estate maids watch her from afar. Rosnia considers tracking down the original heroine, Sierra, to bring her to the estate as planned. A flashback depicts the silver-haired duke in a tender moment with a woman with long white hair. The duke's expression is focused and solemn as he recalls past events involving the original novel's heroine.
Memories of the Duke and Sierra together are framed by glowing light and delicate floral patterns.
Rosnia worries that staying with the Duke will rob him of his destined romance with another woman.
A close-up of Rosnia's eye reveals her sudden realization as she hears an unfamiliar voice approaching. A tall man with long silver hair tied back appears, his presence commanding immediate and quiet attention. The newcomer looks down with a calm, stoic gaze as he prepares to address the pink-haired woman. Standing tall in a dark military uniform, the silver-haired man offers a formal and disciplined posture. Narrative text reveals the man is the half-brother of Rosnia's mother, Ilunia, making him her biological uncle. Rosnia decides to address the man as master, finding his formal title of Sir Rovitz far too stiff. The silver-haired knight, Rovitz, acknowledges her presence by addressing her with her formal name and title. The two stand in the sun-drenched courtyard, their height difference becoming apparent as they begin their conversation. Rosnia offers a radiant smile, her pink hair perfectly complementing the vibrant flowers surrounding her in the garden. Rosnia and Rovitz walk together through the estate, the knight maintaining a respectful distance from his niece. The knight's uniform remains impeccable as he prepares to share stories of her mother's past life. Rovitz claims unworthiness for the title of uncle, but Rosnia insists he join her for a walk. The silver-haired knight smiles gently as he offers to give her a guided tour of the garden.
Rovitz begins his story by noting that Ilunia Hill was an exceptionally talented woman in her youth.
Rovitz recalls his shock when Ilunia joined mercenaries at 12 before eventually getting engaged to Cloud Hill. Chibi Rosnia is amazed, marveling at her mother's romance that sounds exactly like a dramatic fantasy novel. Rovitz speaks her name to get her attention, while Rosnia continues to address him as her master. Llewellyn appears amidst sparkling light and white roses, his expression warm and his presence completely capturing the scene. Llewellyn admits he skipped work just to see her, while Rovitz chooses to ignore the Duke's behavior.
The Duke approaches with a simple question, asking if she has been enjoying her time in the garden.
Rosnia confirms she was with her uncle, while Llewellyn notes she has already accepted the family connection. Llewellyn kisses her hand and declares that he will be the only one to guide her from now. Rosnia blushes intensely, realizing she is defenseless against his charms, while her uncle looks on with approval. Time shifts to Friday as Adrian and the Hill family arrive at the estate for their meeting. Adrian demands to know his sister's location immediately, his voice filled with cold and thinly veiled aggression. Adrian's eyes narrowed with suspicion as he prepares for the tense confrontation awaiting him inside the ducal villa. A promotional page displays various series details and artistic credits for upcoming and ongoing manhwa titles. The Grand Mage Tower reaches into the dark sky, surrounded by swirling energy as the scene shifts backward. A flashback shows a younger Adrian standing in a dark hallway, appearing isolated and deeply troubled by something. The children's father weeps uncontrollably, his hands over his face as he cries out for his missing wife.
Narrative text explains that their mother, a powerful magic swordswoman, vanished, leaving the family in total despair.
Little Rosnia reaches out to her older brother, trying to offer comfort during their family's darkest hour.
Young Rosnia looks up with wide, innocent eyes, unaware of the heavy burden her brother has begun carrying.
Narrative text emphasizes the brother's growing conviction that the world is far too dangerous for his sister.
Adrian's intense focus reveals his singular lifelong goal is to protect Rosnia from any potential harm or loss.
Back in the present, the two families sit across from each other in a formal room for negotiations.
Ruellen maintains a confident smile while Adrian sits in the background, exuding a heavy and threatening magical aura.
Ruellen asks for permission to marry Rosnia, but Adrian shuts him down with a single, icy rejection. Adrian stares coldly at the Duke while a tiny caricature of him expresses shock at being called father-in-law.
The group sits in tense silence while the father reflects on the Duke's surprising interest in his daughter.
Rosnia looks toward the silver-haired man with a nervous blush as she addresses him by his noble title. Ruellen responds with a gentle smile and a faint blush, affectionately addressing the pink-haired woman by her name.
Cloud Hill watches his daughter's radiant happiness and realizes she has finally reached the age to find love.
A flashback shows Cloud Hill with his wife, hoping their daughter would one day find a true love.
The father recalls his own deep romance with Alunia, wishing for his daughter to experience the same bond.
Ruellen and Rosnia share a tender look, their mutual affection apparent to everyone present in the drawing room.
Narrative text highlights the desire to finally end the long-standing bitterness between the Hill and Racine noble families.
The text notes that the Duke's feelings appear genuine as he looks at the woman with intense devotion.
Adrian darkly warns his father that they cannot trust a member of the Rosciane family regardless of appearances.
Cloud Hill prepares to speak about his daughter while Adrian sits with his head down, radiating a dark aura. Adrian's red eyes burn with intensity as he insists that he must remain his sister's primary protector.
Cloud Hill looks at his son with sympathy, acknowledging the deep protective feelings the young man harbors.
A decorative panel frames text stating that Rosnia has grown up and is no longer the small child they remember.
Cloud Hill challenges Adrian's overprotectiveness, asking why he cannot trust his sister to make her own life choices.
The father points out the Duke's evident sincerity and notes that Rosnia clearly reciprocates the silver-haired man's feelings. Chibi versions of the couple celebrate with joy after receiving the father's sudden and unexpected seal of approval. A chibi Adrian sulks in defeat while his father remains firm in his decision regarding the couple's future.
Ruellen faces Adrian and asks what conditions are necessary for him to agree to the formal engagement. Adrian looks at the Duke with a cold, unwavering expression as he prepares to deliver a difficult demand.
Adrian declares that he will only give his blessing if the Duke agrees to perform a dangerous vow.
Adrian names the vow of the heart, prompting Rosnia to jump up and scream in absolute horror.
Adrian tells his sister to stay quiet while she furiously argues that she cannot ignore her own engagement.
A glowing heart wrapped in heavy chains illustrates the restrictive and life-threatening nature of the magical vow requested. Rosnia looks on in terror, describing the vow as a time bomb that leaves the subject's life in constant peril.
A framed portrait of the Duke appears as a voice questions the fairness of Adrian's extreme and heavy demand.
Adrian justifies his actions by stating that the Duke's high status makes such a severe test absolutely necessary.
Adrian stares with a grim expression, ordering the silver-haired man to stake his very life to earn his trust. Ruellen stands tall and resolute, absorbing the gravity of the challenge issued by the black-haired Mage Tower Master. A symbolic image of a couple bound by fate explains that their lives will become inextricably linked by the vow.
Rosnia pleads with the silver-haired man, insisting that he should not have to risk his life for this agreement.
The silver-haired Duke remains silent and contemplative as he weighs the heavy price of the proposed magical contract.
Rosnia reacts with total shock as Ruellen offers a confident smile despite the deadly terms of the engagement. The Duke declares his intent to follow the woman even into death, expressing his absolute commitment to her. Soft light and white flowers frame the Duke's chest as he prepares to formalize his devotion to Rosnia. Rosnia looks at the silver-haired man with wide eyes, asking if he is truly serious about accepting the vow. A close-up shows Adrian clenching his hand into a tight fist as the tension in the room escalates. Cloud Hill tries to defuse the situation, suggesting that his son was only testing the Duke's resolve. Adrian rejects the excuse and begins to gather blue magical energy, signaling the start of the ritual. Blue shoes click against the floor as the Duke steps forward to face the challenge without hesitation.
Thought bubbles scream in protest as someone decries the situation as total madness amidst the swirling energy.
Rosnia grabs Adrian's arm and pleads for him to stop, but her brother remains cold and focused.
Panels show the reactions of the three main characters as magical energy begins to ripple through the air. Llewellyn reassures the panicked woman, telling her that everything he possesses already belongs to her. A speech bubble appears against a misty background, asking if the Duke knows how to perform the vow. Adrian stands ready with a glowing green magic circle, urging the Duke to begin if he is prepared. The scene shifts as someone questions the reality of the dangerous magical pact being made in the room.
A hand reaches out through green magical light as Rosnia watches the ritual begin with an expression of dread.
A promotional page displays artistic credits and series information for the ongoing manhwa about obsession and romance. An opulent palace stands bathed in the warm golden light of a setting sun.
Llewellyn kneels by the bedside, calling out to Rosnia, who is hidden under the sheets.
The grand bedroom remains silent, the morning light streaming through the massive arched windows. Llewellyn looks down with a concerned and weary expression, his hand resting on the bed. Rosnia's internal monologue expresses her frustration with both Adrian and Llewellyn's selfish behavior.
Rosnia peeks out from under the covers, her face flushed as she avoids eye contact.
Rosnia remains in disbelief about the extreme measures taken during the recent magical confrontation. Rosnia reflects on the life-threatening conditions of the vow of the heart they just completed.
Llewellyn declares that from this moment forward, his life is eternally bound to hers.
Llewellyn gazes at Rosnia with a gentle smile as the magical energy fades around them.
Rosnia looks back at the Duke with a stunned and wide-eyed expression of total shock.
Adrian stands with his eyes closed, his stoic demeanor masking his complex feelings about the ritual. Rosnia's thoughts criticize her brother for forcing such a dangerous oath upon the silver-haired Duke.
Rosnia continues to glare at Adrian, her frustration mounting as she clutches her decorative dress.
Adrian justifies his actions as a necessary precaution to ensure the Duke never betrays his sister.
Adrian insists she should have stayed with him, questioning her choice of the silver-haired Duke.
Rosnia begs Adrian to stop speaking while Llewellyn tries to calm her down from behind. Adrian claims he would have been the one to protect her if she had stayed. Adrian stands tall and turns away, his expression remaining cold and unwavering as he departs. Llewellyn warns Adrian that he will be the one to eventually regret this entire ordeal.
Rosnia admits she understands Adrian's protective worries, but she finds his extreme methods pathological.
Narrative text emphasizes that her brother's overprotectiveness has reached an unhealthy and obsessive level.
A final thought bubble curses Adrian for his refusal to listen to anything his sister says.
Rosnia sighs deeply, lamenting that her brother told the man she loves to die with her. Llewellyn expresses his own unhappiness about obtaining permission through such a life-threatening hostage situation.
A speech bubble acknowledges a mistake was made amidst a background of yellow flowers.
Llewellyn looks down with a blush, appearing genuinely repentant for his part in the recent events.
Llewellyn pleads with Rosnia, begging her not to turn away from him again in anger.
Rosnia peeks over the edge of the bed as Llewellyn continues to sit beside her. Llewellyn's sincere and bashful gaze catches Rosnia off guard, causing her to scream in surprise. Rosnia questions if his handsome face is supposed to make her anger disappear, calling him sly. Llewellyn sits dejectedly by the bed, asking what he must do to earn her forgiveness. Rosnia remains silent, her pink hair cascading down as she stares at the Duke's slumped form.
Rosnia finally speaks up, admitting that her anger has already begun to fade away.
Rosnia turns toward Llewellyn with a soft expression, her previous frustration seemingly replaced by affection. Rosnia laments that both Llewellyn and Adrian have a habit of ignoring her own wishes. Llewellyn remains seated on the floor, leaning against the bed while looking up at his fiancée. Rosnia struggles to explain that her anger stemmed from how much she actually likes him. Rosnia stands with her arms crossed, her face flushed pink as she processes her complex emotions. A speech bubble appears among white flowers, acknowledging the gravity of the oath made alone. Rosnia leans in close to Llewellyn, her pink hair framing their intimate and quiet moment. Llewellyn softly speaks her name, his voice filled with a mixture of relief and devotion.
Llewellyn admits his anxiety, his face heating up as he looks toward the woman he loves.
A glowing vision shows Rosnia from behind as she walks toward a bright, shimmering light.
A bubble emphasizes the fear of being unable to see the woman who means everything.
Flashes of Llewellyn's past memories show his long-standing and intense focus on his destiny. Llewellyn rests his head on his arms, declaring that Rosnia has always been his destiny. Llewellyn explains he felt he had to make the oath regardless of the dangerous consequences. Llewellyn looks up with a serene and handsome expression, surrounded by blooming white roses. Rosnia begins to respond, her heart racing as she prepares to address his bold declaration.
The brown-haired butler knocks on the door, announcing a visitor with an urgent matter.
Chibi Rosnia panics, frantically urging the silver-haired Duke to go see the visitor immediately. The servant identifies the woman as the daughter of Killian Oscar, the Duke's former physician. Llewellyn questions what possible business the daughter of his former physician could have with him.
Rosnia looks on with concern as Llewellyn prepares to deal with the unexpected arrival.
Rosnia reacts with shock as the door opens, signaling the start of a fateful encounter.
A vibrant purple energy ripples through the air, highlighting the sudden shift in the atmosphere.
Rosnia laments the terrible timing of the visit while standing behind the silver-haired Duke.
Rosnia worries that Llewellyn will fall in love with Sierra Oscar at first sight.
Rosnia fears the original story is repeating despite her efforts to maintain their engagement.
Llewellyn offers a charming smile, his handsome features bathed in the warm garden light.
Narrative text focuses on the intensity and devotion held within the silver-haired Duke's heart.
Llewellyn calls out to the pink-haired woman, pulling her back from her dark thoughts.
Llewellyn places a reassuring hand on Rosnia's shoulder, sensing her deep and visible distress. Rosnia dismisses her worries and insists they go meet the visitor together without delay.
Llewellyn stares with a focused and unreadable expression as he prepares for the meeting.
A close-up of the Duke reveals his stoic demeanor as he processes the news. Narrative text questions if he will endure a lifetime of suffering from a mana overload. Llewellyn stands with Rosnia, declaring that he does not mind the pain he suffers. Rosnia argues with conviction that he might be completely cured if he seeks treatment.
Llewellyn gently cups the pink-haired woman's face, a tender gesture amidst their serious conversation.
A narrative bubble acknowledges that although he may suffer pain, his heart remains unchanged. Llewellyn kisses Rosnia's forehead, sealing his devotion to her despite the risks to his health.
A narrative bubble expresses absolute certainty that her presence will make his suffering vanish instantly.
Llewellyn dismisses the need for the visitor, while a voice pleads for him to listen. Llewellyn gazes intensely at Rosnia, his hand lingering on her face as the mood shifts. Llewellyn begs Rosnia to stay by his side, expressing his desperate need for her presence.
Rosnia gasps in surprise, her eyes wide as she witnesses a truly stunning appearance.
Sierra Oscar appears, her ethereal beauty described as being like that of a flower fairy. The white-haired woman stands in the doorway, appearing so beautiful that anyone would love her. Rosnia is paralyzed by fear, dreading how Llewellyn will react to the original heroine's arrival. A sharp purple sound effect cuts through the air, punctuating the tension in the room. Rosnia's expression darkens as she senses a familiar magical resonance beginning to take hold. A promotional page displays artistic credits and series details for the ongoing romance manhwa. A title page for Chapter 27 features the main characters amidst stylized graphic elements.
Rosnia continues to worry, her anxiety mounting as she anticipates Llewellyn's inevitable reaction.
Rosnia looks on with a pale face and wide eyes, dreading the next moment.
Llewellyn and Rosnia watch as the white-haired visitor enters the grand hall with grace. Llewellyn maintains a calm and unreadable expression as he observes the woman approaching them. Rosnia reflects on her surprise, noting that Llewellyn's reaction is nothing like what she expected. Rosnia looks at the silver-haired man with confusion, trying to gauge his true feelings. Llewellyn remains silent, his stoic gaze revealing nothing of his inner thoughts or emotions. Llewellyn blushes and asks why he was summoned, appearing flustered by the woman's presence.
Rosnia stares at Llewellyn, stunned by the sudden and unexpected warmth in his expression.
Llewellyn offers a gentle and genuine smile, appearing completely different from his usual cold self. Rosnia screams in internal frustration, wondering what she should do about his unpredictable behavior. The white-haired woman addresses the Duke formally, her blushing face revealing her deep nervousness. Sierra Oscar bows her head in respect, her hands clasped together as she identifies herself.
Narrative text explains that Sierra came seeking Llewellyn to avenge her family and survive.
Rosnia reflects on how her own interference has completely derailed the original story's planned events. A powerful realization echoes through the air, confirming that the Duke chose her. Llewellyn stands with a stoic and unwavering gaze, his decision already set in stone. The pink-haired woman feels a deep sense of relief knowing she won't lose him. Sierra Oscar looks on with a crestfallen expression as she processes the cold reception. A heavy silence falls as the pink-haired woman acknowledges she took Sierra's destiny. The woman reflects on how her actions stripped Sierra of her only survival method. Despite her wariness, the pink-haired woman begins to feel a growing sympathy for Sierra. Memories of her own past loneliness resurface, making her chest ache with shared pain. An abstract vision of falling illustrates the profound isolation and despair Sierra now faces. The woman's eyes reflect a mixture of guilt and complicated emotions regarding the situation. A persistent whisper of guilt suggests her very existence has ruined the heroine's life. Watching the silver-haired Duke, the woman decides she cannot simply ignore Sierra's tragic plight. She contemplates how Sierra's divine power could still benefit the noble family in other ways. A soft, glowing memory highlights the potential for healing and light amidst the darkness. The woman resolves to trust the Duke while acknowledging her own internal struggle for peace. Chibi Rosnia frantically shakes her head, trying to clear the conflicting thoughts from her mind.
Llewellyn notices her distress and looks toward her with a questioning and concerned expression.
Rosnia looks up with wide eyes as the reality of the meeting finally settles in.
Sierra Oscar stands before the couple, her posture reflecting a mixture of hope and fear.
Llewellyn tells Miss Oscar that he has a rough understanding of her current difficult situation.
The three sit in a formal drawing room while the atmosphere remains thick with tension. A close-up of the table shows Sierra confirming the silver-haired man's assessment with a whisper.
Sierra remains tense and guarded as she prepares to voice her desperate plea for help.
A small caricature of the white-haired woman cries out, begging for someone to help her.
Rosnia realizes Sierra is now pinning all her hopes on her since Llewellyn is uninterested.
Sierra explains she learned of his mana overload and hoped to provide a full cure. The white-haired visitor sits on the edge of her seat, waiting for any sign of approval.
Rosnia starts to object, her voice trailing off as she faces the woman's earnest gaze.
Llewellyn looks away with a sigh, suggesting that his presence in the conversation is unnecessary. Sierra's eyes well with tears as she realizes a healer has already been found.
Llewellyn firmly tells Miss Oscar that he does not need her help with his condition. Llewellyn confirms the woman heard him correctly while Rosnia watches with an expression of shock. The silver-haired man officially declines the treatment, his voice carrying a cold and final tone.
Llewellyn states he has no use for her power and cannot make any deal.
Sierra jumps up in desperation, begging the Duke to listen to her for just a moment. Falling to her knees, Sierra insists she can truly cure the Duke's dangerous mana overload.
Sierra pleads for them to believe her words while trembling before the seated noble couple.
Rosnia internally urges Sierra to explain her most important ability before the Duke ends things.
Chibi Rosnia panics, noticing that the silver-haired man is about to deliver another harsh rejection. Chibi Rosnia quickly reaches out to stop the Duke from speaking any more cruel words. Sierra remains on the floor in a humble position, her desperation visible to everyone present. The white-haired woman looks up with a blushing face, her eyes filled with desperate hope. Narrative text reflects on the true nature of the deal mentioned during the tense negotiation.
Rosnia fears Llewellyn having a physical relationship with Sierra under the guise of medical healing.
The pink-haired woman looks down, criticizing herself for what she perceives as a selfish obsession. A warm hand gently covers her own, grounding her amidst her spiraling and jealous thoughts.
Rosnia looks up in surprise, her eyes wide as she feels the Duke's silent support.
Llewellyn remains calm and composed, his presence providing a sense of stability in the room.
Rosnia wonders if the silver-haired man has noticed her deep anxiety regarding the visitor's arrival.
Narrative text focuses on the intense jealousy the pink-haired woman feels toward the white-haired visitor.
The atmosphere remains thick with tension as the three sit in the drawing room.
A magical revelation suggests that mana can be converted into a different divine power. Sierra Oscar stands amidst blooming flowers, her expression filled with a desperate, newfound hope. The silver-haired man remains silent, his stoic gaze revealing nothing of his inner thoughts. Rosnia admits that her dread has come true, even while maintaining her trust in Llewellyn. A sense of hesitation lingers as the silver-haired man considers the weight of the situation. A voice acknowledges the incredible rarity of the ability that has just been described. Rosnia watches Llewellyn closely, her eyes reflecting the growing unease she feels about the visitor. A brief pause in the conversation allows the weight of the proposal to settle in. The silver-haired man acknowledges that the ability being offered is indeed very uncommon and potentially valuable. Sierra reveals that her true motivation is to find the person responsible for killing her family. The white-haired woman clasps her hands together as she prepares to voice a further request.
Sierra breaks down in tears, her trembling form illustrating the immense pressure she is currently facing.
Llewellyn observes the weeping woman with a cold and analytical expression, showing very little outward sympathy. Rosnia looks on with concern as the interaction between the Duke and the visitor intensifies. Llewellyn directly addresses Miss Oscar, admitting that he is fully aware her ability is highly useful. Sierra reacts with a sudden surge of hope, believing she might finally have secured his assistance. The Duke questions how they should cover the damage if he must mobilize knights against an extraordinary enemy. Llewellyn bluntly tells Sierra that she should at least possess the strength to protect herself. A vision of the original story's romance haunts Rosnia's mind as she watches the encounter. The narrative shifts as characters reflect on the personal costs associated with the Duke's condition. Rosnia reflects on how recklessly forward Llewellyn has been, while Sierra struggles to find her voice. Sierra's expression hardens as she prepares to make a definitive statement regarding her future path. The white-haired woman declares her resolve to become strong enough to protect others as well. Sierra cries out in desperation, pleading for help and offering to do anything in exchange. Rosnia remains a silent observer, her heart heavy as she witnesses Sierra's desperate emotional plea. A close-up of a pink eye captures the moment of realization as the situation shifts.
Llewellyn suddenly collapses in pain, prompting Rosnia to scream that his magic is flaring up again. Sierra gasps in alarm, her voice trembling as she calls out to the suffering Duke. The white-haired woman rushes toward the silver-haired man, frantically asking if he is all right.
Llewellyn hunches over in agony, his hand clutching at his chest as magical energy ripples.
A hand reaches out tentatively, only to be met with a sudden and sharp rejection. Llewellyn yells for the woman not to touch him, his mana lashing out in a defensive burst. Sierra is pushed away while Rosnia supports Llewellyn, who is struggling to breathe through the pain.
Chibi Rosnia admits that while the Duke's reaction is understandable, she still feels a bit unpleasant.
Rosnia cradles Llewellyn's face as he leans against her, his skin flushed and slick with sweat. Rosnia notices he is burning up and wonders why he still rejects Sierra's help in this state.
Llewellyn gasps out Rose's name, his voice filled with a desperate longing despite his physical suffering.
The silver-haired man buries his head against Rosnia, repeating her name with intense, feverish devotion. Sierra stands with her back to the camera, forced to witness the couple's intimate, painful moment. Llewellyn weakly instructs Rosnia to tell the servants not to let anyone else into the room.
Sierra Oscar confirms she understands the command, her expression unreadable as she prepares to depart.
The white-haired woman leaves the reception room, closing the door on the Duke and his fiancée.
The tea set remains on the table, a silent witness to the recently unfolded chaotic events.
Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a tight embrace. Rosnia wonders why he chose the reception room sofa to make such an intense and public scene. Llewellyn looks up at her, asking her to lift her head so he can speak clearly. Rosnia's hand rests on Llewellyn's cheek as they share a quiet, tender moment amidst the fading crisis. The silver-haired man leans in closer, the atmosphere between them shifting from pain to raw intensity. Llewellyn pins Rosnia against the sofa cushions, his eyes fixed on her with an overwhelming, obsessive heat.
Rosnia makes a muffled sound as the silver-haired Duke continues their deep and passionate kiss.
Llewellyn pulls back slightly, asking the pink-haired woman to finally call him by his name. The silver-haired man looks down with a soft, blushing smile, his expression full of adoration. Rosnia stares back with wide eyes and a flushed face, seemingly overwhelmed by his sudden tenderness. Rosnia softly whispers the name of the man she loves, her previous anger completely forgotten. Looking at the flowers nearby, Rosnia admits that saying his name feels truly wonderful to her. A thought bubble reveals Llewellyn's desire to stay in this intimate moment for his entire life. Llewellyn asks for her devotion, pleading for her to want only him forever without any intrusions. A hand grips the soft fabric of a dress, emphasizing the physical intensity of their shared connection. Surrounded by blooming roses and shimmering light, the couple shares an intimate embrace for the night. Narrative text notes that the silver-haired Duke's intense and obsessive torment finally ended the following day.
The sun shines over the Grand Ducal Palace, signaling the start of a brand new morning.
A shirtless Llewellyn crosses his arms, stubbornly repeating that he does not require any medical treatment. Rosnia agrees to a plan while privately resolving to keep a close eye on the original heroine. Rosnia reflects on the sincerity of the Duke's heart vow, fearing his mana outbursts are unbearable.
Chibi Rosnia feels a wave of guilt for her greed and jealousy regarding the white-haired heroine. As she walks, Rosnia concludes that hiring Sierra Oscar was the correct choice for her future.
Rosnia worries about Killian's interest in Sierra, resolving to keep the woman under close ducal watch.
Narrative text emphasizes the need to be prepared for variables since the original story has diverged.
A bold declaration states that neither she nor the heroine must suffer as they did originally. Rosnia stands with a stressed expression while a small image shows the white-haired woman crying.
A text bubble outlines her plan to comfort the heroine and eventually become her close friend.
Rosnia envisions training Sierra Oscar as a valuable ally to help eventually defeat the series villain.
A maid informs Rosnia that Miss Oscar is currently busy organizing her workspace in the infirmary. Hearing that Sierra is already preparing to receive patients, Rosnia notes the woman's impressive and thorough nature.
Chibi Rosnia asks for the maid's name, and the brown-haired woman identifies herself as Dillian. A close-up shows Rosnia's gloved hand as she expresses her satisfaction with the current state of affairs. Rosnia resolves to start acting with more confidence in herself as she approaches the infirmary door.
Rosnia reaches the entrance of the workspace assigned to the daughter of the Duke's former physician.
Dillian, the maid, gestures toward the infirmary door as Rosnia prepares to greet the new resident.
Rosnia peeks inside the room, politely pardoning her intrusion as she searches for the white-haired woman. Sierra Oscar turns around in surprise, looking flustered while explaining that her office is still messy.
Sierra explains she cannot see patients yet, but a sudden crash interrupts her mid-sentence with a scream. Medical tools and syringes are scattered across the floor following a clumsy accident in the disorganized room.
Rosnia watches as the white-haired woman kneels among the debris of broken glass and medical supplies.
A pool of fresh blood stains the floorboards, highlighting the gravity of the woman's sudden injury.
Sierra looks at her hands in shock, seeing the blood dripping from her recently wounded fingers.
A close-up of Rosnia's wide pink eye captures her sudden and intense alarm at the sight.
Rosnia lets out a panicked shout, calling out to the injured woman in a state of shock.
Rosnia rushes to the floor, her expression frantic as Sierra looks up in confusion at her visitor.
Chibi Rosnia's panicked scream echoes over the palace as she frantically asks if Sierra is truly all right.
Rosnia reaches for the injured hand while Sierra asks how she managed to arrive so quickly.
The infirmary is filled with boxes and papers, looking completely overwhelmed by the recent and chaotic arrival.
Sierra pleads for the lady to wait, trying to hide the mess and her own bleeding hands. Rosnia refuses to wait, insisting on taking care of the cleanup so Sierra can treat her injury.
Rosnia firmly grabs the woman's arms, causing Sierra to gasp in surprise at the noble's direct help.
Rosnia worries that her brother's bad reputation is making everyone fear her as a malicious person too. Smiling kindly, Rosnia reassures the frightened woman by declaring herself to be a very helpful mage. Rosnia winks charmingly amidst a background of roses, fully committing to her role as a benevolent savior.
Sierra stares in awe as the infirmary is magically cleaned, leaving her completely speechless and amazed.
Sierra is overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking the lady profusely while wondering how she can ever repay such kindness. Rosnia waves off the thanks, explaining that she simply used a little bit of magic to clean the room.
Rosnia's internal monologue notes Sierra's genuinely touched expression, questioning why this small gesture meant so much to her.
Sierra tentatively asks if she can do something in return for the kindness shown to her by the lady.
Standing in the room, Sierra asks if there's anything she can do, while Rosnia begins to make a request.
Rosnia smiles brightly, her expression radiating warmth as she prepares to make a surprising request of the woman.
Sierra is shocked when Rosnia asks to be her friend, but Rosnia tells her not to feel burdened.
Rosnia encourages Sierra to call her by her name instead of using formal honorifics like my lady.
Sierra stammers that she could never dare call her that, but Rosnia insists it is really okay.
Surrounded by glowing light and flowers, Sierra finally manages to whisper Lady Rosnia's name with great hesitation. A narrative bubble reveals Rosnia would prefer if Sierra dropped the formal lady part of her name too. Rosnia smiles warmly at the white-haired woman, pleased to have taken this first significant step toward friendship. Narrative text reflects on how it will take time to get close to Sierra and earn her trust. Rosnia questions why Sierra is cleaning the room alone and wonders if the servants helped her how.
Sierra looks down with a troubled and nervous expression, unable to provide a direct answer to the lady.
Rosnia asks if no one offered to help her, but Sierra remains silent with a bead of sweat. Rosnia smiles while internally questioning why Sierra has such a pitiful and troubled reaction to the question. A narrative bubble wonders why the white-haired woman has such a pitiful and troubled expression on her face.
Narrative text reveals Rosnia's fear that the mansion staff are bullying Sierra before Llewellyn has even fallen for her.
Rosnia looks seriously at Sierra, resolving to discover the truth behind the servants' neglect of the healer.
Dillian agrees as Rosnia notes the servants assigned to the room are missing and orders them summoned.
Rosnia's face darkens as she demands to hear the urgent business that made the servants abandon their duties.
Standing in a shadowy hallway, Dillian announces that she has brought all the relevant servants as requested.
Rosnia addresses the group as those in charge of cleaning Sierra's treatment room, her tone cold and accusing. Rosnia asks if they know why they were called, reflecting on an episode from the original story. Narrative bubbles explain that in the original story, Llewellyn punished the servants who were bullying Sierra. The servants remain silent and fearful under the weight of Rosnia's piercing and highly judgmental stare. Rosnia looks at the group and notes their silence, preparing to confront them about their recent behavior. A narrative bubble asks why they aren't answering and if they are truly scared of the pink-haired lady. The pink-haired woman lets out a chill-inducing laugh, her mana beginning to swirl around her menacingly. The servants claim they acted out of consideration for the lady, but Rosnia declares their excuses are bullshit. Rosnia's expression remains unmoved as she stands amidst swirling magic, ready to deal with the dishonest staff. Standing over the cowering group, Rosnia declares that everything the servants are currently saying is a lie.
Rosnia demands they stop using her as an excuse and tell her why they neglected to help Sierra.
A thick, swirling energy fills the room, reflecting the intense and oppressive mood of the confrontation. Narrative text explains the childish reason for their grudge. They were scolded by Mr. Oscar after a fight.
Narrative bubbles state Rosnia is going out with Sierra and orders Dillian to report everything to the Duke. Rosnia stands with a resolute and determined expression, her authoritative presence commanding the attention of the staff.
Dillian bows deeply in respect as she accepts the task of reporting the servant's misconduct to the Duke.
Sierra is startled and lets out a gasp as Rosnia suddenly turns to depart for their outing.
A close-up of Sierra's blue eye captures her stunned and silent reaction to the noblewoman's swift behavior.
A narrative bubble identifies Lady Rosnia as Sierra looks on with a mixture of confusion and awe.
A narrative bubble mentions helping the lady, highlighting the shift in power and relationship between the women.
Sierra stands amidst white flowers, looking at the lady with an expression of profound and sincere gratitude.
Jagged narrative bubbles reveal Rosnia thinks she has scored some points and that things worked out quite well. Rosnia explains to Sierra that nothing beats a shopping trip when it comes to getting close to someone.
A narrative bubble calls out to Sierra as a horse-drawn carriage sits in a sunny city street.
A narrative bubble asks yes as citizens walk through a bright market street near an outdoor cafe. Rosnia smiles as she hands a small tied pouch to a surprised Sierra while they stand together outdoors.
Sierra stares down at the gift in her hands, her expression full of amazement and quiet wonder.
Rosnia plans to buy Sierra clothes as a way to make her accept money indirectly.
Sierra hesitates while questioning the appropriateness of accepting such a large amount of money.
Clasping the pouch, the white-haired woman expresses doubt about whether she truly deserves this gift. The pink-haired woman reassures her companion that the amount is insignificant by her own standards.
Chibi Sierra is overwhelmed by the gesture, while Rosnia notes her strategy was very effective.
Rosnia realizes she is performing the heroic actions originally attributed to the story's male lead.
Rosnia insists on paying because she is not yet officially a member of the family.
The white-haired woman stares at the gift in her hands with a look of stunned amazement.
Sierra offers her sincere thanks to the pink-haired lady for the generous and thoughtful payment.
The two women walk together through the city, beginning to form a genuine and close bond.
Noticing a nearby shop, Rosnia suggests they stop there for a moment during their outing.
A cheerful voice from within the boutique welcomes the new customers to the high-end establishment.
Rosnia and Sierra enter the lavish room, which is filled with light and floral decorations.
The shop displays rows of elegant footwear and accessories, signaling its status as a luxury boutique.
The shopkeeper immediately identifies the pink-haired woman as a wealthy noble and prepares to serve her.
Surrounded by blooming roses, the pink-haired lady stands confidently as she prepares to start shopping.
Using her business intuition, the shopkeeper identifies Rosnia as a VIP who requires extra special care.
The brown-haired shopkeeper asks what types of clothing the ladies wish to see and measure today.
The shopkeeper observes Sierra, wondering if the white-haired woman is a maid or a high-status companion.
Sierra feels a bit awkward, reflecting on how she was brought along purely out of kindness.
Rosnia formally introduces her companion as a friend and explains they are here for new clothes. The shopkeeper feels immense relief that she managed to secure the attention of the valuable customer.
A narrative bubble reveals that Rosnia's ultimate goal for the day is winning Sierra's loyalty. The pink-haired woman is determined not to let anyone interfere with her plans to befriending Sierra.
Sierra whispers the lady's name as she prepares to try on several different elegant dresses.
The white-haired woman is revealed in a stunning white gown that highlights her graceful appearance.
Standing amidst a background of flowers, Sierra looks like a noblewoman in her new white dress.
Rosnia and the shopkeeper scream with delight, agreeing that the dress looks absolutely wonderful on Sierra. Chibi versions of the characters celebrate the perfect choice while Rosnia watches with great satisfaction.
As the customers depart, the shopkeeper expresses her gratitude and invites them to visit again soon. The group continues their stroll with the guard following behind them carrying multiple shopping bags. Sierra walks beside Rosnia, looking significantly more sophisticated and elegant in her new white attire.
The white-haired woman pauses and looks back, her expression filled with a soft and glowing light.
Pleased with the successful shopping trip, Rosnia asks her companion if she has an interest in books.
Sierra is surprised by the question, while Rosnia admits her prior knowledge is just an excuse.
The pink-haired woman feels a brief moment of guilt for using her secret information to deceive Sierra. A narrative bubble emphasizes Rosnia's intense resolve to become close friends with the white-haired heroine.
Sierra is deeply moved that the lady noticed and remembered such small personal details about her. Rosnia offers to buy many books as gifts, insisting that it is only natural between friends. The sunlight shines brightly over the grand architecture of the city's large and prestigious bookstore. The visitors are awestruck by the massive interior, which features multiple levels of high bookshelves. Sierra explores the vast library while Rosnia follows, pleased to see her companion's genuine excitement. Rosnia informs Sierra that she is going to look for a suitable gift for Llewellyn.
The perspective shifts to the tall shelves, illustrating the enormous variety of books available for selection.
Rosnia feels conflicted about which book to choose, questioning the Duke's taste in prose and poetry. Selecting a book with a decorative starry cover, she decides its visual appeal makes it perfect.
Walking through the aisles, Rosnia notices that Sierra has moved further into the library's interior. The pink-haired woman scans the room as she searches for where her companion has gone. A blonde-haired man with glasses offers a recommendation to Sierra, who accepts it with a smile. Rosnia watches the encounter with a curious expression, wondering about the identity of the strange man. Rosnia watches as the blonde-haired man bids Sierra goodbye and departs from the bookstore. Sierra turns toward the pink-haired woman, acknowledging her as Lady Rosnia with a polite expression. A brief flashback shows the blonde-haired man catching Sierra as she stumbles into him. Sierra explains that the man seemed like a doctor while recommending several helpful medical books. Rosnia reflects on the man's appearance, noting that he possessed a distinctly clinical medical air. Sierra looks at her companion curiously as Rosnia reacts to the news with a thoughtful expression. Smiling, Rosnia internally dismisses her worries as groundless since it is too early for villains. Rosnia insists on buying the books, telling Sierra not to feel burdened by the gift. The pink-haired lady's elegant purple gown is shown from behind as she walks through town. Rosnia pauses in a quiet street, wondering if she accidentally took a wrong turn while walking. Standing in a deserted alleyway, the group stops while Rosnia questions their current unknown location. A brown-haired man in a dark uniform approaches, asking if the noble ladies are perhaps lost. Rosnia looks back at the stranger, her expression conveying a mixture of surprise and sudden caution. Rosnia explains they are trying to reach their carriage while the man offers his local guidance. Walking behind the guide, Rosnia resolves to have a knight accompany her during her next outing. Sensing a change in the atmosphere, Rosnia pauses as she notices the alley is eerily quiet. The pink-haired woman grows suspicious, hoping her sense of impending danger is just her imagination. Rosnia questions the guide about whether the alleyway is always this empty of other citizens. The group continues following the man deeper into the shadows of the narrow and brick-lined passage. Rosnia notes the unusual silence of the surroundings, feeling certain the area was not this empty. Remaining on high alert, Rosnia mentally prepares herself to defend against any potential threats or ambushes. A surge of bright blue magical energy begins to emanate from Rosnia's hand, ready for use. The guide signals toward a direction while Rosnia remains highly suspicious of their current path. The group follows the man through the narrow and increasingly desolate corridor of the city maze. Rosnia comments on the maze-like city, feeling relieved that her prior fears were likely unfounded. Suddenly, Rosnia stops in her tracks, her eyes wide with shock as she senses a trap. Sierra asks why she stopped as the guard draws his sword to protect the two women. Rosnia tells Sierra to stay quiet and remain very close to her side for safety. A powerful burst of blue mana erupts as the guard prepares to engage unseen hidden attackers. Rosnia unleashes a defensive magic circle, commanding the hidden enemies to reveal themselves immediately. Using her magic, Rosnia casts a spell to dispel the attacker's stealth and reveal their positions. Several hooded figures are forced out of hiding, prompting Rosnia to question their suspicious identities. Rosnia wonders if the ambush was planned with full knowledge of her status as a noble. Sierra gazes at the lady in alarm, asking if she is truly all right amidst the chaos. Looking down with an icy expression, Rosnia lamentingly notes that their pleasant outing is completely ruined. Rosnia demands to know the reason for the ambush while surrounding herself with swirling magical energy. The hooded figure stands silently in the alley, their faces obscured as they face the group. Rosnia mocks the attacker's weak mana, declaring they cannot even hope to scratch her with it. Releasing a surge of power, the pink-haired lady vows to make the attackers talk through force. The hooded enemies are obliterated into dark fragments by the sudden and violent flash of magic. The scene shifts to the empty alley floor as the magical energy from the spell dissipates. Sierra expresses her shock as she realizes the attackers have suddenly been turned into dark ash. A glowing orange honeycomb-patterned magical barrier crackles in the air above the buildings. A narrative thought bubble questions if the substance left behind by the attackers is actually bone powder. Rosnia stands in the alley with a grim expression, wondering who would commit such an act. A shout for Rosnia echoes through the night as the scene shifts to the Grand Palace. Llewellyn bursts into the room, his expression frantic as he asks if the lady is unharmed. Rosnia reassures the silver-haired duke that she is fine while noting the speed of his arrival. Llewellyn pulls the pink-haired woman into a desperate embrace, repeating her name with profound relief. A close-up of Rosnia's blushing face captures her surprise at the duke's intense and sudden affection. Chibi Llewellyn hugs Rosnia, vowing to protect her while she reassures him of their shared fate. Rosnia gently touches Llewellyn's face while calling out his name with soft affection. The pink-haired woman asks her companion to calm down during their intimate moment of connection. Llewellyn blushes deeply, his expression filled with tenderness as he looks at the woman he loves. Looking up at him, Rosnia listens as Llewellyn softly acknowledges her presence and his commitment. A laboratory table filled with glassware highlights the ongoing investigation into forbidden magical experiments. Llewellyn stands thoughtfully in the laboratory, holding a bottle containing mysterious, glowing black sand. The silver-haired man explains they must analyze the black sand, estimating it will take half a day. Narrative bubbles state he will strengthen security for the castle and Galantia and requests results soon. Llewellyn embraces Rosnia from behind in the study, his face buried against her shoulder in relief.
Rosnia smiles brightly and agrees with him, surrounded by a floral background representing their blossoming bond.
An ominous thought bubble commands someone to stay away against a dark and fractured background. A close-up of a man's intense, blood-red eye captures a moment of extreme anger or warning.
Adrian looms in a doorway, threatening to kill anyone who approaches while radiating a powerful, dark energy.
In a comedic chibi moment, Rosnia is startled as Llewellyn continues to cling to her. Examining a lab table, someone questions the strange phenomenon of the assailants turning into black sand. The group gathers in the sitting room to discuss the mysterious ash left by the defeated attackers. The Duke requests to see the black sand, while Rosnia obediently addresses him as her father. Blue magical energy swirls as the Duke performs a sophisticated diagnostic spell on the mysterious substance. Rosnia watches in amazement, impressed by her father's masterful and unique method of magical analysis. Rosnia recalls her mother's praise of her father as both a genius and a handsome man.
The Duke identifies the mysterious substance as human bone powder, confirming the dark nature of the attackers.
Looking down at the table, the group wonders who could be behind such a depraved magical act. The Duke admits there is a secret he has kept from Rosnia, causing her visible confusion.
Adrian stands silently beside the Duke, looking grim as they prepare to reveal the hidden truth.
Walking through the room, the Duke begins to explain his reasons for hiding the information. The older man reaches out toward the pink-haired lady, his expression softening as he speaks to her.
A close-up of the Duke's legs as he walks, noting that Rosnia is now fully grown.
Llewellyn looks on with a melancholy expression, his green eyes filled with quiet and reflective thought. Llewellyn places a supportive hand on Rosnia's shoulder as the atmosphere in the room grows more serious. The Duke offers a warm and gentle smile, reassuring his daughter before starting his long explanation. A narrative bubble prepares the listeners for a long story regarding the dark secrets of the past. A view of the study accompanies the shocking revelation that Roberts was involved in her mother's disappearance. Flashback text reveals Alunia vanished 15 years ago while on an urgent mission requested by Roberts. The narrative continues, suggesting that the Castell family of the Raziane bloodline may be involved in the disappearance. Llewellyn looks stunned by the mention of the Castell family, sweating as he reacts to the news. The four characters sit together in the grand sunlit room, processing the weight of the Duke's revelations. A close-up shows a hand clenching into a fist, signaling a moment of intense internal resolve. A metaphorical image shows a heart bound by chains, representing a vow never to betray the lady. Rosnia looks shocked and distressed, thinking that her companion is acting like a complete madman. Rosnia reflects on how the Castell family was never mentioned in the original story she knows. A stylized image shows the back of a woman with long red hair, representing the mysterious mother. A memory shows Adrian standing over defeated knights, crackling with electricity in a display of power. A close-up of Rosnia's hand on Llewellyn's arm as she questions her own ignorance of the situation. Rosnia looks at Llewellyn, noting that these events ultimately led to a deep relationship between them.
Adrian gazes coldly at Llewellyn, expressing his profound disapproval of the silver-haired man and his family.
A split-screen contrast shows Llewellyn's calm face against Adrian's dark and intense glare. Adrian challenges Llewellyn to prove himself if he wants to be acknowledged by the family. Llewellyn accepts the challenge, his face partially obscured by shadows as he prepares to act. Narrative text explains that Llewellyn began an investigation into Castell and shared everything with the family. The lady examines a mysterious parchment, perhaps a clue from the investigation's recent findings. Rosnia lets out a sharp breath of disbelief as the weight of her discovery settles.
Looking at the map, she questions why a village is sandwiched between Raciana and Roberts.
Standing alone by the window, the pink-haired lady contemplates the political landscape before her. A hand raps against the wooden door while a voice asks for permission to enter. Turning toward the sound, Rosnia grants entry as she prepares to discuss her findings. A sharp inquiry fills the air as someone asks what the lady has been doing. Llewellyn enters, explaining he used magic to trace the origins of the mysterious bone powder. He points to the Empire's northeast, identifying a specific village located squarely between rival territories. Rosnia's brow furrows as she internally wonders if the Roberts family is truly the culprit.
The lady gazes up at the Duke, feeling the gravity of their current investigation deepening.
The silver-haired man softly calls her name, his voice breaking the heavy silence of the room. Looking resolved, Llewellyn begins to link this recent incident to several other past occurrences. Gently lifting her chin, Llewellyn mentions the incident involving Sir Alunia with a somber tone. He notes that whether this is the work of Robitz or Castell, something must change. Llewellyn pulls the pink-haired woman into a sudden, tight embrace, seeking comfort and offering protection. A firm declaration echoes through the room, insisting that his core intentions will never change. Surprised by the intensity of the gesture, Rosnia remains frozen in her companion's desperate arms. The story pauses briefly, transitioning into a new phase of the investigation and family drama. Reasserting his devotion, the silver-haired man whispers that nothing about his feelings will ever shift. Rosnia is overwhelmed by the depth of his affection, her expression softening into wide-eyed shock. A somber transition follows as the weight of their shared secrets hangs heavily in the air. Caressing her face, Llewellyn vows to ensure that the perpetrators face a very strict punishment. They stand together amidst blooming flowers, a visual testament to their growing bond despite the chaos. Finding her voice, Rosnia asks why his feelings for her have grown to be so intense. Taking her hand, Llewellyn admits he has long since accepted the depth of his overwhelming love. The pair shares a quiet, intimate moment as the sunlight filters through the library's tall windows. Closing his eyes, the Duke basks in her presence, finally letting his guard down completely.
Llewellyn orders the Castell family to meet, but they postpone until his upcoming birthday banquet.
Rosnia grows suspicious, realizing the enemy is likely trying to buy time to destroy evidence. They decide to secretly infiltrate the Marquis estate using a small and inconspicuous magical beast. A round, fluffy pink bird perches on a branch, serving as their unlikely secret spy. A gentle farewell is offered, wishing the tiny magical scout a very safe and successful trip. With a sudden burst of magical sparkles, the pink bird takes flight toward the destination.
The tiny creature speeds through the air, disappearing into the distance to fulfill its mission.
Standing on the high balcony, Rosnia waves toward the sky as she watches the bird depart. The pink-haired lady looks out at the clear horizon, hopeful that their plan will bear fruit. Bright light and music fill the grand ballroom as the much-anticipated birthday celebration finally begins. Rosnia questions the choice of a requiem for a birthday song, pitying Llewellyn's difficult past. She recalls an intimate moment of vulnerability when Llewellyn reached out to her in the darkness. Wearing an elegant purple gown, Rosnia feels a sudden rush of heat to her blushing cheeks. Noticing something unusual nearby, the lady lets out a small sound of confusion and mild surprise. A blonde-haired man in a dark uniform turns away, seemingly trying to avoid being noticed. The man begins to flee quickly, his rapid footsteps echoing through the polished marble hallway. Insulted by his behavior, Rosnia demands to know why the insolent man is suddenly running away. Confronting him, she asks why he avoids her and if he'll continue after she's Duchess. The man jokes about crawling instead, boasting of his status and the Duke's full trust. In a sudden comedic shift, Rosnia reaches out and pat-pats the blonde man's head playfully. The knight's face turns bright red as he shouts, demanding why she is treating him like a pet. Staring back at him, Rosnia's blank and blinking expression captures the awkward hilarity of the moment. Llewellyn embraces Rosnia with affection, while she later thanks the blonde knight for a great realization. Adrian questions the lady's sudden nonsense while she asks where he is heading next. Rosnia suggests meeting Sierra after eating, leaving the blonde knight completely shocked by her. A horse-drawn carriage waits at the palace gates to transport the noble group today. The maids gather and enthusiastically praise the young lady's absolute beauty in her gown. Rosnia looks stunning in her white dress, blushing slightly while preparing for the grand event.
Feeling satisfied, the pink-haired lady thinks that everyone in the palace has opened their hearts.
A maid expresses her deep fulfillment in finally being able to assist the ladies dressing. The servant politely invites Rosnia to descend to the lower floor of the palace shrubbery. Narrative text explains how the maid provides comfortable tips for Rosnia's future as a duchess. Surrounded by Rosnia glows with happiness and excitement for the upcoming royal birthday celebration. A musician gracefully plays the harp as atmospheric music fills the palace's festive grand halls. Elegant guests begin to gather in the ballroom, conversing while hiding behind decorative handheld fans. A narrative bubble confirms that guests are arriving one after another for the banquet. Walking through the palace, Rosnia asks if the Castell family has arrived at the party yet. Standing alone in the hallway, the lady prepares herself for the impending political family encounter. Rosnia lets out a sound of confusion as she notices something unusual near the balcony. Reaching toward the sky, the lady welcomes back the tiny magical bird from its mission. Looking at her hand, Rosnia questions what happened during the small bird's secret surveillance trick. The lady gazes intently at the pink bird, noticing the physical toll of its journey. A crimson backdrop accompanies an inquiry about whether the Duke of Razian noticed anything suspicious. Arrogant thoughts dismiss the Hill family while noting Llewellyn is still under 30 years old. Villains worry about Llewellyn's supporters but feel confident that their evil plan remains fully hidden. A hooded figure senses a strange energy while the bird's eye captures the dark scene.
Petals drift through a bright white light as the perspective shifts back to the lady. A thought bubble explains that she was previously unable to reach the bird's magical signal.
Rosnia realizes the bird cut its mana connection to avoid detection by the enemy senses.
The tiny pink bird drops a collection of stolen scrolls onto the palace floor safely.
Rosnia is impressed that the magical beast successfully brought back evidence despite the intense interference.
Examining the documents, the lady notes that the sender's name is missing from the letter.
A close-up reveals the enigmatic and flowery contents of the mysterious handwritten letter she found.
Rosnia is stunned to recognize Marquis Castell's signature, confirming his involvement in a dark plot.
Reading on the balcony, she discovers an assassination plan set for Saturday, May 25th.
The shocking target is revealed as Hector Raciane, Lelian's father and the former duke.
Standing in the moonlight, Rosnia reels from the discovery of the plot against Llewellyn's father.
Narrative text describes Poyensa Tigre as a name that terrorized imperial citizens for 50 years.
A mother warns her child that the terrifying Poyensa Tigre will snatch them for misbehavior.
The history of Poyensa Tigre is described as being filled with horrific and extremely cruel deeds.
A splash of pink liquid represents the violent and dark legacy left by the assassins.
Rosnia reflects on how she still remembers these terrifying historical events from 10 years ago.
A map highlights 5 noble houses exterminated by Poyensa Tigre for their illegal slavery practices.
A stern warning advises never to borrow the power of Poyensa Tigre even against enemies. Mourning noblemen stand together after their houses were destroyed while supposedly fighting for imperial justice. Rain falls over a desolate cemetery, emphasizing the tragic fate of those mentioned in history.
Rosnia realizes the Castell family will be destroyed if their deal with the assassins is exposed.
Rushing through the hall, the lady asks a maid where Llewellyn went after leaving the ballroom.
Rosnia decides to check the cemetery and instructs the maid regarding their potential banquet delay. The maid acknowledges the lady's command as Rosnia hurries away with the evidence in hand. The interior of a grand, sunlit memorial hall houses the tombs of the Raziane family. Llewellyn stands alone in the silent hall, reflecting before the final resting place of his father. Rosnia runs urgently toward Llewellyn in the memorial hall, calling his name to catch his attention. Turning in surprise, Llewellyn asks how she found him as she breathlessly urges him to take the documents.
A close-up shows Llewellyn's hand grasping the aged parchment papers Rosnia just delivered for his urgent review.
As Llewellyn processes the shocking information, he looks stunned while Rosnia watches him with a supportive gaze. Standing before the tombs, Llewellyn realizes the Castell family killed his parents after 22 years without evidence. Rosnia apologizes for the news on his birthday while standing near the tombs of Egrain and Hector. A thought bubble reflects on the enemy's ruthless desire for the Racian headship regardless of the cost. Llewellyn's expression darkens, noting that the Marquis disobeyed orders and crushed the documents to hide their crimes. Looking up at him, Rosnia suggests that Poyensa Tigre might have planned to eliminate the Castell family. Red-tinted narrative text explains that a potential link to their hideout made the group of assassins very nervous. Llewellyn declares that discarding useless clients is an old trick, then firmly tells Rosnia to leave it to him. A text bubble highlights the birthday banquet, the prayer, and the couple's highly anticipated upcoming engagement ceremony. Llewellyn stands with icy resolve, vowing that he will not let the Castell family ruin their special day. Rosnia continues to apologize for the timing, explaining she only wanted to celebrate his birthday with happiness. Llewellyn looks at her with a gentle gaze, reassuring her that she has nothing to apologize for. Chibi Llewellyn admits he is used to sad birthdays, prompting Rosnia to tearfully object to his past loneliness. Llewellyn resolves to focus on his primary goal of ensuring their upcoming engagement ceremony proceeds safely and successfully. A large narrative bubble outlines his second goal, exposing the Castell family's crimes and bringing them to justice. Llewellyn and Rosnia stand together in the hall, their silhouettes framed by an elegant and floral memorial background. A tender moment occurs as Llewellyn reaches out and gently strokes Rosnia's cheek with his gloved hand. Llewellyn gazes down at her with intense affection while continuing to cradle her face in his hand. The pair shares a quiet, intimate look as sunlight filters through the memorial hall's grand and historic windows. Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a deep embrace, their bond strengthening amid falling petals in a bright, ethereal light. Guests at the ballroom offer congratulations on the engagement, praising the lovely couple and hoping for lasting peace. The pair appears together in regal formal attire, looking stunning as they are presented to the gathered nobility. Duke Hill approaches the new Duke Raziane, holding an ornate box as he offers his formal greetings. The older man tosses the gift box toward Llewellyn while casually wishing him a very happy birthday. A close-up of the open jewelry box reveals a beautiful and intricate floral pin resting on a cushion. Llewellyn uses his magic to suspend the gift in midair, sensing that it is no ordinary magical tool. Duke Hill explains the artifact will save Llewellyn's life from death once, while Adrian stands silently nearby. Chibi Rosnia is impressed, realizing her father gave her future husband an incredibly rare and powerful magical tool. Llewellyn's thought bubble expresses sincere gratitude for the thoughtful gift from his future father-in-law for Rosnia's sake. Turning toward Rosnia, Llewellyn offers a soft smile and thanks her as she stands happily by his side. Llewellyn bows respectfully to Duke Hill, who acknowledges him as his future son-in-law with a proud expression.
Adrian gazes coldly at Llewellyn, his red eyes filled with a silent warning and an intense, unspoken rivalry.
Rosnia looks back and forth between the two men as the atmosphere in the room grows noticeably tense.
Adrian challenges Llewellyn to try him, while Llewellyn dismisses the threat with a cool and unfazed expression. Adrian flicks a purple stone into the air, prompting Rosnia to initially mock his seemingly casual birthday gift.
Narrative text reveals the stone represents ownership of a major magic stone mine held by the Hill family. Adrian stands with the glowing blue magic stone floating before him as he faces the silver-haired Duke.
Guests whisper in shock about the gift, noting the improving relations between the Hill and Racian noble houses.
A narrative panel emphasizes that magic stone mines are worth an immense fortune across the entire Eidos continent. Rosnia stands in stunned silence, her eyes wide as she processes the incredible value of Adrian's birthday gift.
Llewellyn gazes at the floating magic stone with a neutral expression, contemplating the significance of the extravagant gift. A close-up shows Llewellyn's white-gloved hand catching the large, glowing purple magic stone with calm precision.
Adrian warns Llewellyn to behave himself, threatening to take the mine back if he treats Rosnia badly.
Llewellyn looks at the stone with a subtle, satisfied smile while accepting both the challenge and the gift.
A close-up of Llewellyn's blushing face captures his gentle smile as he feels the warmth of the moment.
Rosnia's blushing face is captured in a close-up, her heart pounding as she watches her companion's reactions.
Chibi Adrian watches them closely, declaring he will be observing Llewellyn to ensure he keeps his promise. Rosnia laughs nervously as she questions Llewellyn if everything will be all right today. A close-up captures the lady's focused gaze as she attempts to shift her thoughts. Guests observe that the Rovitz family is absent and likely skipping tomorrow's engagement ceremony.
The hem of a rich red gown sweeps across the floor during a grand arrival.
Rosnia reacts with sudden surprise as a mystical energy begins to swirl in the air.
A narrative bubble announces that the Marquis and Marchioness Castell have finally joined the party.
The scene briefly pauses, marking a transition in the flow of the birthday celebration. Steady footsteps echo through the hall as the new arrivals approach the royal group. The pink-haired lady turns her attention toward the grand entrance with an expectant look. The Marchioness Castell and her blonde son make their formal appearance before the nobility.
A close-up shows the train of the Marchioness's ornate dress against the polished floor.
Rosnia maintains a regal posture, her profile illuminated by the shimmering lights of the ballroom. Rosnia thinks they are shameless for arriving late, likely delayed after discovering the stolen ledger. A sharp sound rings out as a high-heeled shoe makes contact with the ballroom floor. Bowing deeply, the Marchioness offers her formal greetings and wishes the Duke well today. Llewellyn stands with an imposing presence while the blonde Marquis looks noticeably pale and anxious.
The Marquis stammers while greeting Llewellyn, clearly intimidated by the silver-haired Duke's cold presence. A close-up shows Llewellyn acknowledging the man's arrival with a sharp, chillingly calm greeting. Llewellyn notes the Marquis looks unwell and pointedly asks if something happened to him recently.
The Marquis frantically denies that anything is wrong, while the Marchioness watches with narrow, calculating eyes.
Intervening, the Marchioness claims her son is simply not of sound mind and asks for understanding.
The brown-haired woman offers a strained smile, requesting the Duke's generosity toward her son's behavior. An oppressive silence falls over the group as the two families face each other intensely. Noticing Rosnia, the Marchioness mocks her wasteful dressing just for being the Duke's future fiancé. A close-up of the villainess reveals her disdain for the lady at the center of rumors. Rosnia smiles internally, feeling completely prepared to retort to any insults the Marquiness might offer. The Marchioness suggests that mixing magician's blood with the noble Rosnia line risks the family's legitimacy. Standing defiantly, the Marchioness hides her smirk behind a fan while looking down at Rosnia. Rosnia's brow twitches with irritation as she realizes the woman is openly and brazenly provoking her. Adrian's eyes glow with murderous intent as blue electricity crackles around his hands in fury. Rosnia urgently grabs Adrian's arm, reminding him that they are currently in a public banquet hall. Duke Hill promises to restrain Adrian while Rosnia expresses her gratitude for her father's timely help. Llewellyn gazes coldly at the rude guests while Rosnia notes that he is also reaching his limit. Placing a hand on Llewellyn's chest, Rosnia insists on handling the confrontation with the Marchioness herself. The lady steps forward with grace, her white dress shimmering as she addresses her opponent. Rosnia pointedly asks if the Marchioness is suggesting that the imperial family's blood is also impure.
Surrounded by flowers, the pink-haired lady maintains a serene and devastatingly confident smile during her retort.
The Marchioness is rendered speechless, her face contorting with shock at the lady's sharp political counterattack. A close-up shows the woman's hand trembling as she tightly grips her decorative lace fan. A stylized image of a crowned king represents the Hill family's hidden and prestigious royal ancestry. Rosnia declares her family's legitimacy matches Llewellyn's and warns against these words reaching the emperor's ears.
Guests whisper about the Hill family's imperial ties and the certain fallout once the emperor hears.
Gritting her teeth, the Marchioness fumes internally, calling the pink-haired lady an insolent and bratty child. The Marchioness thinks Rosnia is an arrogant, pampered girl who lacks respect for her family elders. Rosnia reflects that the magician haters' insults are unoriginal and mocks their lack of creative new arguments. Nearby nobles gossip about the Marchioness's rash behavior while her son tries to quiet his mother.
Rage boils over on the woman's face as her eyes widen in a display of pure hatred.
Shouting with desperation, the Marchioness reasserts her status as a relative of the Duke of Rosnia. The woman lashes out, calling Rosnia a vulgar creature who fails to show proper respect. The Marchioness hurls a final insult, mocking Rosnia's mother as a lowly mercenary with no roots. The Marchioness insults Rosnia's background, while the man at the bottom vows to protect his family's history. A warm flashback shows Rosnia as a small child being tenderly embraced by her loving, brown-haired mother.
Rosnia's expression remains stoic as blue magical energy begins to surge and crackle throughout the grand ballroom.
Adrian prepares to unleash his magic, his eyes glowing with fury as someone calls out his name. Panic seizes the Marquises as she recoils from the sudden and violent display of glowing magical power.
Llewellyn stands as an imposing figure of authority, while the cornered Castell family cringes in visible fear.
A close-up captures the Marchioness's face as her haughty expression crumbles into genuine wide-eyed terror.
The Marchioness attempts to play the victim, accusing the Hill family of being ill-mannered, cruel, and violent. Llewellyn issues a chilling ultimatum, warning the Marchioness never to insult Rosnia or her family again. The Marchioness claims concern for Rosnia, but Llewellyn dismisses her, stating people would think Rosnia belongs to Castell. Staring with icy resolve, Llewellyn makes it clear that Rosnia belongs solely to him in every reality.
The Marchioness is momentarily stunned into silence by the Duke's possessive and fiercely protective verbal declaration.
Llewellyn produces a document, asking the Marchioness if she recognizes the proof of her family's dark crimes.
A narrative bubble identifies the document as the ledger detailing transactions between the Poenza Tigre and Castells.
Llewellyn stands triumphantly holding the incriminating ledger as the Castell family faces their inevitable social ruin.
The scene shifts as credits acknowledge the team responsible for translating and editing this dramatic chapter.
Llewellyn demands to know if the Marchioness recognizes the evidence, while her son reacts with visible horror.
Standing with regal authority, Llewellyn presents the stolen ledger to the shocked and gathered noble guests.
The main title of the series is displayed against a dark, starry background, marking a narrative transition.
A dark and heavy atmosphere fills the hall as the truth about the Castell family emerges.
Guests whisper in disbelief as the connection between the Castell family and the notorious Poenza Tigre is revealed. Llewellyn affectionately credits Rosnia for finding the ledger, publicly shaming the Marchioness for underestimating his beloved fiancé.
Rosnia blushes as Llewellyn acknowledges her contribution, though she feels bashful about him doing so in public.
Rosnia mocks the Marchioness, asking how it feels to be ruined by the very woman she tried to belittle. Desperate and cornered, the Marchioness frantically tries to shift the blame onto her long-deceased husband's past actions. Turning away, the Marchioness whispers to her son that they should simply deny everything to avoid their downfall.
Llewellyn mocks her lies, questioning if recent transaction records are the work of a specter from the grave. A close-up of the Duke's intense gaze reveals his deep-seated hatred for those who murdered his father.
Narrative text confirms that the previous Marquis Castell ordered the cold-blooded assassination of Hector Racian long ago.
A glass shatters as the guests react with pure horror to the definitive revelation of Lord Hector's assassination. Noble guests recall Hector's noble character and express their absolute disgust at the Castell family's cruel act. A vision of the smiling Hector Racian appears, highlighting his upright character and the Emperor's immense shock. Violent memories depict the previous Marquis's crimes and the subsequent accidental deaths that followed his dark deeds.
A nobleman shouts that this horrific fact must be reported to the Emperor immediately for swift imperial justice.
The ballroom is filled with shouting as the guests demand the Castell scoundrels be imprisoned for their actions. The Marchioness grinds her teeth in fury, realizing her plans for status and power have utterly collapsed tonight.
Seeing no way out, the villainess decides that she will pin the entire situation on that insolent girl.
The Marchioness screams her innocence, accusing Rosnia of fabricating the fake ledger to frame the Castell family.
A sudden shout for her to stop echoes through the hall as the son finally breaks his silence.
A decorative lace fan falls to the floor, symbolizing the final end of the Castel family's noble facade.
The blonde Marquis stands in the middle of the ballroom, looking utterly defeated by his mother's frantic lies. A single, desperate plea for his mother to stop now hangs heavily in the silent and tense room. Arand looks at the Duke with a broken expression, finally preparing to admit the truth of his family's history. The blonde man's gaze shifts toward Llewellyn, acknowledging his brother's right to know the truth of the past. Aaron confesses the ledger is real, admitting his father killed Hector while his mother aided the assassination plot. A vision shows the Castel couple's cruel history of continuing to assassinate political opponents for several decades. Aaron begs his mother to end the cycle of crimes committed in the name of the Castel family. Rosnia watches in shock as Aaron further reveals his mother's role in Lady Igraine's failing health and death. Aran details how his mother planted a spy to poison Lady Igraine.
A final decree confirms that the Marchioness Castel is to be taken away and confined to the underground prison.
Llewellyn stands with regal poise among white roses, his expression calm and victorious.
Guard sees the stunned Marchioness Castel as the crowd watches her sudden downfall.
The Marchioness screams in denial, desperately claiming her innocence as she is dragged away. Arand confesses his long-held secret to Llewellyn, apologizing for his past cowardice and silence. Rosnia gazes at Llewellyn with deep empathy while he processes his brother's painful confession. The blonde man confirms his compliance, bowing his head in submission to the Duke. Llewellyn approaches Aaron, who remains visibly shaken and stammering during their private exchange. Placing a hand on the man's shoulder, Llewellyn dismisses the current topic for later. Turning back to his guests, Llewellyn graciously invites everyone to resume the birthday festivities. Rosnia reflects sadly on how Llewellyn lost both parents to the cruelty of his enemies.
Llewellyn admits he is accustomed to spending his birthdays in a state of gloom.
The pink-haired lady laments that despite her efforts, the day ended on a tragic note. The scene shifts to the silent Raciane family cemetery under the cover of night. A priest stands before the grand tombs, leading a somber memorial service for the deceased. Tearful mourners pay their final respects to the late Lord Hector and Lady Igraine. Narrative text summarizes the banquet's end, the memorial start, and the Marchioness's formal imprisonment. Aaron receives a chance for redemption because he chose to confess rather than participate. Flowers adorn the graves as a silent vow is made to ensure justice prevails. Llewellyn and Rosnia stand hand in hand before the tombs, finding strength in their shared bond. The couple shares a quiet moment of reflection before the scene begins a new transition. A magnificent sun-drenched palace stands ready to host the next major event for the family. Rosnia appears radiant in a white gown as the day of her engagement finally arrives. Credits acknowledge the specialized team of translators and editors who produced this dramatic chapter. A stylized illustration marks a transition in the narrative flow between the two major events. The interior of a grand cathedral is lavishly decorated with white flowers for the ceremony. Llewellyn and Rosnia face each other at the altar, surrounded by elegance and light. With a blushing face, Llewellyn offers a sincere pledge to marry his beloved Rosnia today. Smiling warmly, Rosnia reciprocates the pledge to marry Llewellyn and seal their future together. The priest offers a gentle blessing to the couple as they complete their sacred vows. Sharing a ceremonial cup, the pair drinks together to finalize their formal engagement pledge. Llewellyn gazes at Rosnia with overwhelming affection, his eyes filled with love and devotion. The priest continues his address to the gathered nobility, presiding over the joyous occasion. A guest claps with delight, celebrating the union of the two prominent noble houses. Adrian issues a stern, silent warning, while Duke Hill applauds the newly engaged couple. The couple waves happily to the cheering crowd as they celebrate their official engagement. A horse-drawn carriage speeds through the lush countryside away from the grand celebration. The carriage wheel spins rapidly, emphasizing the haste of their departure from the reception. Inside the private carriage, Llewellyn pulls Rosnia into a sudden and deeply passionate kiss. Rosnia reacts with wide-eyed surprise as Llewellyn's affection becomes unexpectedly intense and bold. The Duke continues his romantic advance, his face flushed with desire for his fiancée. Llewellyn holds Rosnia close, his hands grasping her waist with a sense of possessive longing. Breathless and blushing, Rosnia attempts to slow him down as his kisses grow more fervent. Llewellyn ignores her mild protest, continuing to show his affection in the privacy of the carriage.
Rosnia playfully scolds him for his wild behavior while they are still in transit.
The couple appears in a memory of the ceremony, looking perfectly regal and composed. A comedic flashback depicts Llewellyn whisking Rosnia away from the reception like a whirlwind. Sitting across from him, Rosnia questions their mysterious destination after her sudden kidnapping. Llewellyn gazes at her with a soft, smitten expression that reveals his singular devotion. He reaches out to cradle her face, his touch gentle as he prepares for their arrival. A breathtaking castle overlooking a serene body of water serves as their final romantic destination.
The scene shifts to a secluded and beautiful villa belonging to the prominent Razian noble family.
Rosnia calls out Llewellyn's name while he holds her close and whispers her name back to her.
A magnificent winged unicorn lands gracefully on the balcony as the couple watches in awe and wonder.
The grand carriage travels toward the ducal estate, signifying the start of a busy new chapter.
Numerous wedding gifts arrive from every region, filling the room with piles of large decorative boxes. The butler requests Rosnia's assistance in sorting gifts while she marvels at the insane volume of offerings. Identifying a gift from Belosa, the butler prompts Rosnia to recall their past proposal before accepting it.
Rosnia expresses concern that accepting the gift might offend the emperor due to their long-strained political relationship.
The butler remains completely silent as he listens to the lady's insightful concerns about the delicate situation. Rosnia becomes uneasy and wonders why the butler has suddenly stopped speaking during their serious conversation. The butler begins to cry, prompting a panicked Rosnia to wonder if she said something offensive.
Overcome with emotion, the butler expresses his deep gratitude that Rosnia will be the future mistress.
Rosnia playfully boasts about her hidden capabilities while the butler is moved by her perceived humility. Following several busy days, the domestic staff cheers for the future madam as she handles her duties. The day finally arrives for Marchioness Castell to be transferred to the capital for her trial. News of the dramatic events at Llewellyn's birthday celebration eventually reaches the ears of the emperor. Following the emperor's direct command, the Marchioness is moved to face a formal noble trial. Rosnia reflects on how difficult it was to prevent her father and Adrian from killing the Marchioness. Adrian demands to move aside to punish the prisoner, but Rosnia begs him to preserve the evidence.
Llewellyn and Rosnia plan to use the imprisoned Marchioness as bait to lure out the Poensa Tigre. They anticipate that the notorious Poyensa Tigre group will launch an attack on the prison escort carriage. Sensing an immediate magical threat, the brown-haired man shouts that mana is flowing from the path ahead. A sudden and violent spatial distortion ripples through the air, signaling the start of the enemy ambush. Rosnia reacts with shock as the magical ambush begins to unfold around the racing escort carriage. As the assassins appear, orders are shouted for everyone to take their positions and prepare for battle.
One of the hooded assailants moves with lethal intent as the battle for the prisoner begins.
Noticing a familiar face, the black-haired man asks why he is currently siding with the Poensa Tigre. Hearing the name Killian Asof, Rosnia reacts with sudden shock and questions if she heard it correctly. Rosnia remembers that the man named Killian was once a member of the prestigious Magic Tower.
The mysterious and dangerous Killian Asof is revealed, accompanied by a large and menacing wolf-like shadow.
Rosnia realizes the man is a former tower member who vanished years ago and is now a villain. Rosnia questions whether the appearance of this specific villain at this moment is a mere coincidence.